Hello dear viewers, here is a new video that I will please you on my channel Manhwa Compilation. I hope you like my story and how I told it to you. 4 countries, 20 peoples, several races, and one world of magic whose name is Rondell. Here technology intertwines with science fiction, magic, and fiction. People walked among the huge skyscrapers. And not only them, elves, werewolves, wizards in long black cloaks, some had no face at all, and some wore a hare's head around their neck. The age of magic and sword has passed. Today, Rondell is a world of very advanced magical technology, and it is called the Age of Magical Progress. I'm standing at the portal. And where are you? The girl turned to the watch on her hand. Oh, I'm already teleporting now. Wait, came from the clock. Many residents of Rondell wore clothes that looked like they were from the Middle Ages and the Renaissance. But despite this, each of them had a personal gadget or smartphone in their hand. However, despite advanced technology, Rondell was still a feudal country ruled by kings and nobles, and class inequality was still in effect. "Where are you getting under the feet of the young master?" the bodyguard shouted, covering what was probably a teenage nobleman. "I beg you, don't execute us, sir." "Sorry," the commoner asked, bowing at his feet while his baby looked at them with interest. "Oh, don't pay attention. Go your own way." Another bodyguard addressed the interested public. There were many similar situations. They happened every day. Despite this, the Age of Magical Progress is called the Golden Age of Rondell. And on the 29th of December, 1999 according to the magical calendar, the day before the new century, Archmage Rondella announced his will. This turned the world upside down, or rather, his testament. From all the screens of various gadgets, televisions, phones, screens, the face of the Archmage could be seen. Millions of people and creatures stopped what they were doing to listen to him. Power, knowledge, wealth. I hid all my heritage in different parts of this world. Those who find these treasures will take his place. This was the decision of Archmage Rondell. So the great sorcerer shocked the world with his will. He was the founder of Rondell and had a hand in the formation of this world as a technological civilization. He was also the chief sorcerer of the Ninth Circle, whose name was Manuel Lucas, and occupied the place of Archduke of the growing empire. In the entire history of the world, there were only 3 people like him, wizards of the Ninth Circle. He had no children, no successor, and his knowledge and power were great. Based on the will, the seeker will have his entire inheritance in his hands, and the one who manages to find his fate will receive everything. The realization that anyone can find a heritage and become its follower shocked a huge number of people, and so began the pursuit of the fate of Archmage Lucas. There was continuous news and speculation about this. There were different options. In Lucas's dungeon, and in the Dragon Wasteland, and in the country of the Elysia Alliance, a well-known offshore country, and in the center of the world, in a stormy sea. As soon as a new place was announced where treasures might be located, seekers immediately went there. Regardless of nationality, race, or rank, the people went in search of the fate of the Archmage Lucas. But rumors are rumors, and the conversations were only about where they were hidden. "I heard that fate itself is located in such and such a place. I'm meeting with friends," people said. "Isn't it in another such and such place?" Others objected to them, but no one could find the fate of the Archmage. Many people investigated, but never found any clue that could lead them to their goal. So 20 years passed until that very day came. A young man stood at an abandoned pedestal in a ruined castle in the virtual world. Drops of sweat flowed down his exhausted face, but he did not pay attention to them. His eyes shone with joy. He reread the system alert that appeared on the small screen in front of him over and over again. "You have found the destiny of Manuel Lucas." One day it was he, the main character of our story, who received the fate of the Archmage. But let us transport you to the year 2007 of the Aid calendar, to Lawrence Castle. A better estate could not have been found. Famous architects, followed by designers, worked on the castle itself for a very long time. As a result, the palace turned into a work of art. But the garden should not be underestimated. Gardeners worked there every now and then. "Young Mr. Adrien, are you going to the office again?" asked the butler. "Yes, I want to put back the books that I have already read." A very little boy initiated him into his plans. "My lord, you could have told us. We would have done it," the butler wailed. "No, I still want to find some books, so don't worry." The second son of Viscount Lawrence, Adrien Lawrence that is, our hero, objected to him. Then, While still a child, watching the conversations from the sidelines, the servants were touched by how well-mannered he was. In fact, our hero was reborn in the body of Adrien Lawrence, but at the same time remembered his past life. The end of his past life was boring. He served in the army and had only a month left before demobilization, but he died in an accident. The truck he was riding in overturned. When the young man opened his eyes, he was not in the Republic of South Korea, but in the kingdom of Ryangarth. And he was no longer Kim Min-gi, but Adrien Lawrence. If before this the young man lived in a middle-class environment, now he became the second son of a wealthy viscount and lived on an estate. At first, our hero was very surprised and alarmed, but then he realized that his past experience could greatly help him in this new life. From all sides, it was heard every now and then that the young master was very talented. While his peers were captivated by games and other children's rubbish, he greedily sought knowledge, and Dad was proud of him. I was slightly embarrassed when his child was praised. Adrien exceeded the expectations of those around him and his father. However, not everything was so rosy. Rondell was a civilization more technologically advanced than humanity in the 21st century. Therefore, his knowledge of human science did not help him in any way. As he read the books, he began to have more and more questions. In this situation, the young man was simply obliged to improve his skills. Well, at least he thought so. Even though his physical body was only 6 years old, he often stayed in the library until late at night, and continued to behave as if he were a genius. But one day, something happened that turned his world upside down. This life was not as easy as it seemed at first glance. One day, sitting at the dinner table, Adrien felt that he was not feeling well. Another minute, and he fell onto the carpet, convulsing. His mother immediately ran up to him, followed by the servants. Now the boy no longer even had enough strength to cough up the lump of blood stuck in his throat. "Young master, hurry up, call a doctor." People rushed around him. When Adrien Lawrence was 7 years old, they tried to poison him. Night fell on the estate, and the boy was still lying unconscious in his bedroom. He was very lucky. If we had been a few minutes late, he would have already been dead. The doctor expressed his concern. "Who did it?" the maid asked while talking to him, although she might not have asked, because the culprit was obvious to everyone. As soon as the boy came to his senses, it immediately came to him through the veil of consciousness. "Adrien, you can't imagine how scared I was for you. How do you feel?" Looming before him was the figure of Viscount Lawrence's first wife, Anne Lawrence. The woman was beautiful. Her stately figure and red hair immediately made her stand out from the crowd. To her, high-born nobles, he, the son of a commoner, second wife, was a bone in her throat. Especially because his father loved Adrien more than her son. Our hero's anger knew no bounds. Thoughts swirled in his head. So what if this world has gone far ahead technologically? The government system here is terribly backward, and he cannot convict Anna without having evidence. So why doesn't the father do anything? It couldn't be that he didn't suspect her, so he just turns a blind eye to it? Suddenly Adrien realized the terrible truth, which made him sad, and it was then that he stopped pretending to be a young talent. 10 years have passed. On the 1st of May, 2019, according to the magic calendar, in the center of the city of skyscrapers, a salesman once again welcomed a visitor to a virtual reality capsule store. The visitor was our hero. Now he was no longer 7, but 20 years old. Over the past time, he had matured. However, looking at him, one could not say that he was a mountain of muscles. He had white hair and blue eyes. The second salesman, a boy, looked in surprise at the first salesman, a girl. Why did she suddenly become so unkind? "Do you know him? Is this some kind of celebrity?" he asked. Putting a finger to her lips, the girl asked him to shut up. "He is the second son of Viscount Lawrence." She nodded at the visitor sorting through the goods. "Well, if Lawrence, then he is one of the owners of these lands. Why then is he dressed like a commoner?" The guy didn't believe his colleague's words. "Can I see you?" was heard from the hall. Kicking her workmate under the counter, the girl responded with a smile on her face. "Of course, how can I help?" It turned out that Adrien couldn't find the Chronicle scorecards online. "Oh, here they are. We have new instructions to sell cards only at the checkout. How much will you take?" the girl asked, opening the package. Without a moment's hesitation, the younger Lawrence replied that he wanted everything. "Thank you for your purchase." Putting the cards in a bag, The girl handed it to Adrien. Taking the newly purchased item, the young man headed towards the exit. Newbie. When will you pull yourself together? Don't you know that there is a punishment for insulting a nobleman? As soon as Adrien left, the saleswoman began to count the guy out. Excuse me, but why didn't he send a servant to the store then? He shouldn't do this on his own. He asked himself, accepting his guilt, but the girl herself didn't know. To be honest, she was also scared when she first saw the younger Lawrence. Does he often come like this? The newcomer continued to inquire. 2 or 3 times a month. As you can see, the gentleman is very interested in online games. The girl summed up. At this time, leaving the store, Adrien opened the package and looked at the cards. Here there was 5 million worth of loot inside the game currency. In Korean won, it would also be about 5 million. Then a man in a uniform approached the thoughtful young man. Young master, we were informed that young Master Cedric came to your house. This news did not please the young man. Ah, here comes Adrien. Adrien's mother, Sylvia Lawrence, came out to meet her son. Looking at her, it became clear who the young man resembled in appearance, with the same white-gray hair and bright blue eyes. Yes, I came, but where is my brother? The young man asked, hugging his mother. In principle, he didn't have to ask, because he immediately heard, Adrien, are you wandering around the city on foot again, without a car? Are you even out of your mind? Cedric Lawrence, who was 23 years old, growled at his brother. Although they were brothers, the Viscount's eldest son was very different from our pale-faced hero. He was just a mountain of muscles, and his dark skin, black eyes, and dark hair made you wonder whether they should take it at all. You are the son of a nobleman. Maybe, for once, you will think about the reputation of your family? Cedric continued to make claims to the gambling addict. Adrien just sighed resignedly. Family reputation? Yeah. And this is what he says to him, who openly hangs around with girls. If the elder brother were not the son of a nobleman, he would not even be able to take care of himself. But it's better not to contradict him. Otherwise, this concert will only drag on. Bowing his head, the younger Lawrence apologized. I'm sorry that I was careless. This won't happen again. Hearing the apology, Cedric looked at him incredulously, after which a contemptuous grin appeared on his face. Indeed, there is no need for half-breed commoners to be proud, he quipped without hiding his disdain. Wanting to shorten the stay of his older brother, Adrien asked him, Why did you complain, brother? Clearing his throat, as if wanting to show as much attention to himself as possible, Cedric answered, My father wants me to take over the management of one business, Far's Distribution. You've probably heard about it. Of course, Adrien heard about this, but the news did not strike him. According to earthly concepts, the nobles of Rondell are both oligarchs and statesmen. Naturally, they own many businesses. Far's Distributions is a mining company owned by the Lawrence family. Now it was clear why Cedric broke into our hero's house. Besides, he was also a greedy and incompetent guy. I understand. I don't pretend to anything. Adrien immediately explained his position to his brother. I'm glad you figured it out so quickly, the Viscount's eldest son said, crossing his arms over his chest. If that's all, please leave. Adrien asked, showing him your new loot in online games. At first, bewilderment was visible on Cedric's face, but then he laughed loudly in Adrien's face. Well done, do this. After which he patted his younger brother on the shoulder and, satisfied with himself, turned away and left. Adrien, are you sure you should have refused? Sylvia asked after waiting until Cedric moved to a safe distance. Yes, Mom. It's better to just not interfere, said our hero, looking thoughtfully after his brother. Welcome back, young master. The butler greeted the younger Lawrence as he entered. I'll go play. Please disturb me only if there is something very important. Adrien punished, heading to my room. After the poisoning attempt, he stopped striving to study and distanced himself from everyone, including his own ears. Probably the father did not need the son of a commoner, who at the same time was not a genius, and the man lost interest in him. Thanks to this, Adrien never again found himself in life-threatening situations. He lived for 10 years as an invisible shadow. After graduating from the university, the academy left the estate with his mother. How many times did various conversations take place behind his back at the academy? This gaming addict, the same son of a nobleman who was once considered a genius? Some whispered. There is an opinion that he became like this due to poisoning. Others spread rumors. We saw how he grovels before Mr. Cedric and does not dare say a word against him. lives in his game. He expelled himself from the family, said others. Most of the services in the new house of Adrien and his mother are protégés of his eldest wife Anna. Even at home, a young man must think about what to say out loud. The young man has long ceased to take into account the opinion of people that he is in a desperate situation, and all that remains for him is to run away from reality. Finally, Adrien entered his abode, his room. Having locked the door, I checked whether it was strictly forbidden. He put the bag of cards on the shelf and went to the table on which the universal glasses of additional reality lay. Without hesitation, he hurried to put them on, before finding himself in the virtual world. Adrien tried to predict what pleasure this time the continuation of the game would bring him. By logging into the online chronicle system, he was credited with the first level of the Destiny quest. Next, the character was loaded, after which his virtual character was synchronized with the body of our hero. Is playing online games an escape from reality? It's all a lie. If you want to conduct total surveillance of me, why don't you follow me in the virtual world? Adrien thought, mocking his enemies. If in the real world he was white-haired, then in the virtual world he was brunette, only his blue eyes remained the same. The games that our hero played are very different from those to which you and I are accustomed. For example, abilities acquired in online chronicles are reflected in reality. But that was not the only difference. 10 years ago, Adrien entered the Royal Academy. After another day of school, he went to the library to write an essay on Manuel Lucas and found something completely unexpected. While reading encyclopedias, I came across the Lucas family credo. In the text, he found one word that, whatever one may say, could not be interpreted in any way, except for the English word why. But how could the Archmage know English? Was Manuel Lucas really from our world, like Adrien? But the young man immediately stopped thinking so because he did not have enough evidence. However, it soon became obvious to him that the Archduke was an Earthling. These were his last words. I would really like to walk along the California beach with Mary again. Our hero did not understand what place the Archmage was talking about because he had never heard of the Californian beach. But I didn't miss this in his biography, because everything that this wonderful man said is important. So the Duke's last words were recorded as is. So it was written in the biography of the Archduke compiled by his butler. It is clear that this could not be a coincidence. The fact that the great Archmage Rondell was an Earthling like him shocked the younger Lawrence. Trying not to waste time, Adrien continued the investigation and found more and more irrefutable evidence that Lucas was indeed from the human world. The young man was greatly helped in his investigation by the first virtual reality system, which connects the physical body to a simulation in a dream state. Simply put, these are the same glasses that Adrien put on at the beginning of our story when he entered his room. The fact that the young man was from the world of people was very useful to him in the task of finding the destiny that Manuel left to his descendants. Hundreds of sleepless nights, books read, maps and diagrams viewed, and in the end his labors were crowned with success. Adrien received the fate of Manuel Lucas. His happiness knew no bounds. Now for the rest of his life he will ride like cheese and butter. Suddenly the world around him seemed strange. This was the feeling he got when someone was about to attack him. He pulled out a dagger but did not have time. Something flashed near his left forearm and blood sprayed. I rejoiced early, Adrien thought angrily. Opposite him stood the goblin. The height of the monster was up to his waist, but nature compensated for his height with force, and the creature, taking out a second axe, swung at our hero again. The young man, looking at the small creature, tried to design the trajectory along which the weapon would fly, mentally cursing him. Although Adrien was in the virtual world, he felt physical pain for real. As soon as the younger Lawrence reached the fate of the Archmage, true suffering immediately began. Our hero did not know whether he should get involved with this and take on such a cross. The fate of Manuel Lucas was hidden in an unexpected place, in an online game, in a virtual world. Although the virtual world was outwardly indistinguishable from reality, it was nevertheless a game and there was no feeling of pain in it. But Adrien felt pain and every fight cost him dearly. What no one knew was that when receiving the fate of an Archmage, a person moved his body into the game reality, completely, and not asleep. He even felt offended. No one would believe him if he told anyone. The second hatchet did not hit its target, and the goblin decided to rush at the player in hand-to-hand combat. But Adrien managed to withstand the attack, responding by inflicting several stab wounds in vital places with the monster's dagger. For defeating his opponent, the young man immediately received several pleasant bonuses. Firstly, he reached the 10th level Secondly, now he can change his occupation, and thirdly, he was credited with 1 level of the Fate quest. And fourthly, the main god Ariel moved him to a secret place. Our hero found himself in a small room, completely tiled. The walls, ceiling, floor, everything was in snow-white tiles. First, his first character loaded into the new location, synchronizing with his physical body, and Adrien's abilities in the Chronicles Online are reflected in reality. Having caught his breath, the young man was in an excellent mood for 2 reasons. It goes without saying that this is about finding Lucas's fate, and secondly, that he has finally reached the desired level and cleared the first level. True. Synchronization, of course, does not make itself felt in reality for a long time. Looking around, the young man noticed a very ordinary door a little further away. The game system asked the young man if he wanted to go up to the 2nd floor of the magic tower of Manuel Lucas. Of course. Adrien smiled, pulling the door handle. The room whose threshold our hero crossed was one of the Archmage's offices. Hundreds of books on shelves and racks, a treasury and artifacts, carpets and precious wood laid out everywhere. This is how you can describe the office. There was nothing on the 1st floor, but here, in the office, everything is different. Without moving far from the entrance to the room, Adrien noticed treasure chest number 1. Having opened it, he received 5 trillion loots. In order to receive the amount, he needed to log into his account. Finally, something that actually feels like a reward. It's just a pity that this cannot be converted into real money. Adrien thought, slightly saddenedly. Suddenly, everything around the young man sparkled. The glow came from the magic ball the player was holding, which he took out of the chest. Now, he has 1 circle. Thanks to the creation of the first circle, the young man will receive the job of a magician, and another circle will be created on his synchronized physical body. That is, I master magic in the game, and will be able to control it in the real world. Not money, but this is the true value. The system warned the young man not to leave the game, otherwise his physical body would be damaged. Before this, Adrien had seen health points and mana points, and did not perceive them as something unusual, but it was a completely different thing to feel magical energy in real life. Fortunately, the creation of the circle was successful. The young man felt the mana swirling in his chest, and it was not easy. So this is what it is, the power of fate of the Archmage. Connect the game character in terms of abilities and other things with your physical body in reality. Walking past the shelves of books, the younger Lawrence wondered. Since the first circle has been created, why not learn the spell that corresponds to it? In addition, Lucas most likely bequeathed all these books to someone who would find destiny. He barely had time to think about it when, as if with a snap of his fingers, a system alert appeared in front of him on a small screen, right in the air. The system asked our hero what book he would like to find. Such settings were very convenient. Besides, there were tons of books in the office, and Adrien didn't even know how many years it would take him to read them. But this is how the library of the best magician of humanity should be. After some time, tired, the young man leaned against the partition of the rack. He had a very bad headache. In games, it is convenient to read books with 1 click, instantly downloading their content. Only he personally felt faint and pain from this process of recording information into his brain. But this was no longer so important, since he only had 1 last book left to read. The description said that the written edition will teach the reader to hide the presence of a circle and the amount of mana, but it does not work against master-level knights and magicians from the 7th circle and above, as well as against search artifacts of the highest levels. This was the skill the young man needed most. It was as if the game knew what circumstances he lived in the real world. With the help of the first circle, Adrien began to read, and immediately his eyes grew dark and his head began to ring. His legs gave way and he fell to the floor like a limp doll. The younger Lawrence did not expect to quickly reach the level of Manuel Lucas. He understood that this was only a microscopic step. He still had so much to do. But the young man just wants to live with his mother in comfort, prosperity, and security. For this, Adrien was ready to do anything. The next day, the sun was shining on the training grounds of Lawrence Manor. "And you are more resilient than I thought, sir," remarked confidant and knight of the Eternal Guard Vice. A strand of hair the color of an ear of wheat stood out above his pleasantly surprised brown eyes. "Really?" Adrien asked, wiping his sweat with the towel provided by the knight. "To be honest, I was surprised when you wanted to practice with the ball," Vice replied. "I've been feeling out of shape lately, and I decided that I needed to work out." The young man explained his initiative. In fact, he did this for the game, because training in reality will also affect the character. After a real fight, the young man realized the hard way that he needed to pump up his stamina. But the young man felt how the circle of magic was developing, and his endurance was growing. It seems like the level up was immediately reflected in the real world. Thus, we can conclude that he will be able to use his skills outside the game. Fortunately, our hero solved the problem with hiding the circle of magic by learning a spell that will prevent the knights from recognizing the presence of mana, because knights have such an ability. "Has something good happened in your life, sir?" Weiss asked. Adrien was a little confused. "Is it really written all over his face?" "Yes, I just received a good reward in the game." The young man shared his joy. Those around the training ground looked at each other. "Well, of course, he's an addict." "Weiss is also weird. Why is he so friendly with this unfamiliar person? What is he trying to achieve?" They whispered to each other. "These scoundrels, Kolner." The knight did not have enough words to describe his anger. "Do not pay attention." Our hero patted him on the shoulder. He was pleased that Weiss was worried about him. But the man did not know that Adrien was only pretending to be harmless. He needs to look like this in order to survive, so that Cedric and his mother, Anna, do not see him as a threat. The best thing to do in this situation is to appear like a soft-headed fool. "Well, I'll go play." Our hero counted down, heading to his room. Having entered the game, the system again welcomed the player to the online chronicles. Finding himself in the virtual world and seeing his body in the game, Adrien became convinced that his stats were indeed reflected in reality. But now, in order to get to even greater amounts of gold and abilities, he needs to squander everything he has. Driven by this decision, the young man entered the product catalog, anticipating the pleasure of shopping. As someone wise said, the most important thing in online games is a fat wallet. Experience points, blessings of the goddess, protection of the goddess, everything Adrien didn't buy. However, all these purchases and acquisitions would have been very useful to him earlier, but the catalog was not available to him until he reached the 10th level. But now the turn came to the highlight of the program. This acquisition was called the summoning of a companion. Adrien has very bad stamina, so if he has someone who will aggro all enemies, then a companion will help him. Of course, it will take away the experience that Adrien could gain by fighting himself, but still, it is not a waste of money. Therefore, the young man decided to choose the best companion to attack for him, no matter how much it cost. Full of determination and money, our hero went into the satellite catalog. There were hundreds of options. However, Adrien was not impressed by their number. A comparison even came to his mind with the very bad online games he played in Korea. And she was also angry that he had invested 30 million won, but could not find a companion to his liking. After wandering through the catalog for a long time, something finally caught his attention. Or rather, a shield-bearing companion who carries the shield of God. It was the girl, Aria Skysteel. Adrien saw such a companion for the first time, and explained this by the fact that perhaps she was just new. In addition, at her level, even among unique companions, she was among the best. Finally, a great companion. The young man was delighted and confirmed that he wanted to take Aria Heavenly Steel as his companion. But there was one thing. The satellite was taken once and for all and could not be changed. This was the first time in all of Adrien's gaming experience that something like this had happened. After all, usually the satellite could be changed at any time. It was like a restriction that was applied to an event. In general, our hero believed that being a wizard, he would not need any other companion. Therefore, if the purchase is unsuccessful, it will not hinder him in any way. As soon as the registration of the satellite began, Adrien was blinded by the radiance. It was so bright that the young man does not remember that there were such strong and bright light effects before. But then the moment of truth and the companion, as if appearing out of nowhere, approached Adrien. Her hair was light brown and her eyes were bright green. Dressed in knight's armor made of white metal with a gold border, the shield she held was half her height. Looking at the acquisition, our hero was slightly embarrassed by the lack of any emotions on the girl's face, as if he had summoned some kind of golem that only had the appearance of a person. But at the same time he noticed that she was very, very beautiful. But this did not really matter, since her duty was to attack. Despite the fragile physique of her companion, she fought desperately, and each of their fights ended in victory. Adrien had one strategy. While Aria fought the monsters, he helped her on the sidelines. For example, in this case he used a magic arrow. Having won another battle, The young man looked into the system, into his account. Although the young man's name was Adrien Lawrence in real life, in the game he used the name from his past life, Kim Min-gi. For all the time spent in the game since the last time we entered the game, our hero has already managed to reach level 20. But the hunt was successful only because Aria was with him. Even if I lose in experience, I don't feel that it is something significant. Although the further, the more experience the companion will need. The young man thought, sitting at the roots of an oak tree. Maybe in real life it will be easier for him to practice magic. The young man spent 15 whole hours in the game since his last entry, and he should have left it in order to rest. Another second and Adrien was back in his physical body in the real world. Stretching on the bed, he noticed that today had been a very productive day, and also decided to rest a little and go to the training ground. But here to the right of the bed, he noticed out of the corner of his eye something strange, large, and not inherent in his room. "You!" our hero shouted, jumping out of bed. Aria stood right in front of him. Having calmed down a little, he made sure of the authenticity and reality of the companion. "Who are you, anyway?" he asked the girl detachedly. "I am your companion, sir," the tank answered meekly. "That's not what I'm talking about. I mean, how could you leave the game with me?" Coming closer, Adrien leaned slightly towards the girl. "I understand. You want to know how I can materialize in your world?" Aria formulated a clearer idea of the young man's question. "Well, yes," our hero confirmed, mentally surprised that she understands everything perfectly, since she can distinguish the game from reality. "I am a homunculus, in other words, android. I was created by Archduke Manuel Lucas. He created Aria Heavenly Steel with the characteristics and appearance that the girl told him about herself, while the young man was silently shocked. "So you are part of his legacy?" he commented. "Right," Aria confirmed. If Adrien had known that this would happen, he would have found himself another companion. Of course, he's not being picky, but Manuel Lucas could have at least warned him somehow. "Are your statistics the same in this world?" the young man continued to ask. "Yes, but some of them are closed, and will only be opened when your level increases. If I maxed out my statistics, I would be equal in strength to a grandmaster." If the girl said all this with an absolutely calm face, then our hero was greatly amazed, because the grandmaster is the same as the levels of the 8th and 9th knights, and according to the level of magicians, the 8th circle. It turns out that the satellite can compete with the strongest of this world. In Rangard itself, the most powerful magician is only of the 7th level, and in the world of magicians of the 8th circle, there are only 8 people. Was Manuel Lucas really able to create a monster of this level? Now Adrien has changed his mind about the army, because having such a loyal, strong, and efficient companion is even very good. But where will he take her in this world? Driven by this thought, the young man asked the girl where she was before she moved to this world and how to move her back to the game. "I was in sleep mode, in a repair shop in the holy city of Everhill. Then I was transferred here from the surprise encounter system. Return travel is only possible at the same time at which I was sent here. If I need to go to the workshop, I will go myself," the companion reported. "Do you have the function of stealth or hiding magic?" After thinking, the young man asked Aria. "I belong to the warrior class, so I don't have stealth, but hiding mana is possible." The girl answered, and immediately received an order to use this ability. After a short period of time, the protective field around her armor disappeared, and so did the mana. The fact that she can do this is very good. Otherwise the knights would recognize her, and many unnecessary questions would arise for Adrien. But what should he do now? He thought that things couldn't get any worse. Adrien has already raised his reputation to the ground. On the same day, rumors began to spread. Some people said that the servants caught the younger Lawrence with some girl, and now they are together all the time. Every exit from the estate or walk was accompanied by sidelong glances. "Can you imagine what a shame?" the ill-wishers just groaned. Unlike the others, Sylvia, the mother of our hero, could not wait for her son and the stranger to get married. And Weiss was surprised at how quickly the young master matured. But Adrien had no time for that. He had already reached the 30th level, and the unexpected encounters quest was again open to him, the task of which was to defeat the orc warrior. Our hero deliberately pretended that he, an immature and stupid young nobleman, had brought a strange woman into the house, and then no one would guess who Aria was. although Sylvia was already ready to get them married. "By the way, Archia, what happens to your body here when you're in the game?" our hero asked. It turned out that the body switches to eco mode and outwardly looks like she is sleeping. However, for the safety of the master, she will always have the system alert turned on. "So, if something bad happens in reality, you will immediately react and call me?" asked the younger Lawrence. Arcia nodded in agreement. The monster that appeared in front of the guys was a goblin, but its eyes shone red much brighter than those of ordinary creatures, and its height exceeded our hero and his companion. It was the same orc warrior. "Man, if I kill you, I will increase my level," the monster growled, thereby showing that he himself was not going to retreat. It was forbidden for Hadrian to use one-shot attacks such as bombs and scrolls in battle. And this was exactly what usually helped the young man out in fights. "You want your heir to be strong, right, Manuel Lucas?" our hero thought sarcastically. "Arzia!" Adrien said only one word, but the girl already understood everything and, turning on the protective magical field, moved to attack. "Death to the little people, though," the goblin growled, swinging his mace. The blow was incredibly strong, but as soon as the weapon landed on the companion's shield, it seemed as if a small pebble had hit metal. The goblin did not expect this. Now it's time for Adrien to join the battle. According to the classics of the genre, he used a magic arrow, and he aimed it straight at the enemy. The goblin suffered great damage, and our hero began to rejoice at the approaching victory. Due to the fact that he was wearing all kinds of magic-enhancing clothing and artifacts, his spell is many times stronger than it is in the first circle of mages. If the monster is now on the same level with him, then Adrien will now subdue him, and Arcia will kill him. But while Adrien was thinking, the goblin did not lose his head and dealt another crushing blow. Fortunately, Arcia got her bearings and put up her shield, repelling the attack. "Go crazy!" the young man laughed, looking out from under the shield. Despite the huge amount of health points, it was obvious that the goblin was seriously injured, and our hero couldn't wait to end this ordeal. Continuing to attack, he compared the dimensions of the monster and thought that he fell from just one blow. How good it is that Arzia is with him. Junior Lawrence would be lying if he said that an attack from such an enemy would not frighten him, because he had died before. But now, at this level, he should not allow fear to overcome him. Having assessed the situation, Adrien called on the digging spell. The ground beneath the goblin began to shake, and he began to lose his balance. A little more and his legs were sank into holes and piles of stones, which is why he fell to the ground. "Arcia, don't let him get up, I'll shoot him!" Adrien ordered. "Eat!" The companion picked up, immediately starting to carry out the order. The monster's health points immediately began to rapidly decrease, because under such an attack of magic, he could not resist. Now out of 5,500 points, he only has 50 left. "How stubborn," our hero said, looking at the barely breathing enemy. Having become enraged by his phrase, the goblin again began to swing his weapon. 2I-42 Adrien again aimed a magic arrow at him, and the War Mountain won. Now he was credited with the second level of the Destiny quest, and the next floor of the magic tower was opened. But let us be transported to the office of Viscount Adrien Lawrence, who thoughtfully looked at the twinkling stars in the sky through the window. "What are you thinking about, dear?" Anna, who entered the office, asked him the reason for the sad sigh. Having noticed his first wife, the Viscount did not react in any way. He only silently looked into her eyes. Anna quietly approached her husband, hugging him lightly. "Are you worried about Adrien, that he brought a commoner to the estate?" The woman continued to inquire. Rayford pulled away from her slightly, and he handed her a letter with a broken seal. This was a notice of the start of the conscription campaign. The letter said that war in the Kreutzen Empire was inevitable, and the suzerain ordered the nobles to appear with the army for training. Viscount Lawrence is to appear in command of the western group of troops, with 5 advanced detachments, 5 knights, and 1,000-foot soldiers. After reading the contents of the letter, Anna's forehead became covered with cold drops. "You won't send Cedric to war, will you?" she asked in a trembling, pleading voice. Rayford remained silent. "Let's go, Adriana. He's still good for nothing except playing with toys all day long. Maybe he will at least once justify his right to be called Lawrence," Anna insisted. "You didn't even think about him all this time, and now you want to demand that he give his life?" The Viscount suppressed the claim. He wanted it that way. Until this moment, he had enjoyed a carefree life, the wife answered, letting the taunt go unnoticed and slightly moderating her ardor. "Do you really think so?" Rayford said. "What are you talking about?" Anna asked in response. For a minute there was silence between the spouses. Cedric is the heir to my estate, and I will provide you and your father-in-law with everything you need. So I ask you to accept my decision with humility." The Viscount began to initiate his wife into his plans. Anna, in silence, did not take her eyes off her husband, hoping that the price for the fact that her son would not go to war would not be great. Rayford planned to send Adrien away, as she wanted. But upon his return, his son would receive complete independence. And nothing should threaten Adrien and Sylvia. No more espionage, and no more decoy servants. He thought it would be fair. Freedom, that's what Adrien will pay for his trip to war. And our hero, having returned to the real world, was practicing on the training ground. Aria stood nearby, watching him. It should be noted that each training session for the young man cost him a lot of effort, but the result was not long in coming. "Sir, you have become so strong thanks to your training these days. It's incredible how strong you have become. If you had been practicing since childhood, you would be such a master now." Weiss admired the young man. Adrien listened to the praise with a calm face. Of course, he just leveled up. Moreover, he had already reached level 30 and completed the second level of the Quest of Fate. He liked the reward for the quest. He received a bunch of gold and a second circle of magic. And also hidden storage. It's like a game's inventory, an invisible space in which he can store things. It can be used not only for personal equipment, but for personal consideration. Statistics in the game are reflected in reality, so Adrien can become a magician, while still having the physical strength of a knight. If our hero fully masters the entire legacy of Lucas, he may become even greater than him. "I've already rested. Let's continue." Adrien turned to the knight, but then his plans were thwarted. "Young master, His Grace the Viscount is calling you." The servant reported the urgent news. Having found out, the young man became wary. It did not often happen that his father wanted to see him. A couple of days later, our hero appeared at the Lawrence estate along with his mother. Now the entire family of 5 was in the office of the head of the family. The room was quite large, covering 2 whole floors. Having heard the reason why Rayford called him to him, Adrien finally stopped racking his brain. "Father, how can this weakling represent our family in the war?" The eldest son was indignant, almost sputtering with saliva. "Cedric, you are the only heir to the estate. I cannot risk you." The head of the family tried to calm him down. "Is it really possible to risk Adrien?" Sylvia butted into the conversation. But after the words of her husband about the fact that the heir is more valuable than other children, I was horrified by his prudence. Our hero was angry that Rayford called him just to say this. However, it wasn't that bad. The young man will be able to take virtual reality glasses with him, and no one will bother him to play thanks to his position. But the main thing is that when he leaves, he will be able to get out from under Anna's supervision. "I understood you, father. I agree to go to war and be the representative of our family." Having considered his situation, Adrien agreed. The Viscount was grateful to him for his consent. "Of course, I respect my father's decision, but know that if you disgrace your family at the front, I won't leave it like that." Cedric threatened his younger brother. The Viscount's youngest son could hardly contain his smile. His older brother was already mature in age, but not in character. Looks like he was just spoiled. He promised out loud that he would do everything in his power. "Adrien, stay, I need to talk to you," Rayford ordered, standing up from the table. And so the 2 of them went out onto the terrace. The man even sent the guards away. I wonder what he wants to tell without witnesses. "What did you want to tell me, father?" The young man decided to be the first to start a conversation. Looking after the setting sun, the Viscount answered him. "If you return safely, then I will move you and Sylvia to the royal lands. This will be your reward for going instead of Cedric. You will enjoy complete freedom." She would never allow me to not be under her control. How could she agree? In any case, I can't trust my father yet, thought the young man. "I understand. I need to think, father." The younger Lawrence obediently announced out loud. "I understand that you don't trust me," Rayforth remarked somehow bitterly. "That's not the point. I first need to return from the front alive." The young man smiled slightly sadly. The Viscount absolutely agreed with him, smiling in response. He reached into the secret breast pocket of his coat. The man pulled out something small and handed it to his son. These were 5th and 6th class protective field rings. Teleportation was impossible on the battlefield, so that was all Rayforth could do for him. In addition, the rings were a very valuable artifact. 295. "Thank you." The youngest son thanked his father. "Always be alert," the Viscount instructed him. Turning around, Adrien noticed Cedric and Anna watching them. If it was clear from her brother's face that he was offended, then Anna was extremely pleased with the situation. Of course they were spying. Our hero was not even angry with them for this, since he was already accustomed to their unscrupulous behavior. I'll take care of Sylvia, and you take care of yourself. The Viscount did not order, but asked in a slightly hushed voice. When they wanted to poison our hero at the age of 7, his father's reaction was a blow to him. And then his father disappointed him many times. But there are only enemies around, and the only one the young man can trust is his father. I will definitely be back. I trust you, father, he promised. After his sincere and heartfelt words, Rudolph was barely able to say, thank you. When Adrien and Sylvia left the estate, and the first wife and eldest son left his father alone, the Viscount sat down on the sofa, rubbing his temples. All these events and conflicting feelings made his head hurt. Touching the protective ring, Rayforth used a pain reduction spell. Gradually, the headache stopped pounding, and the man was able to soberly assess the situation again. My boy, I knew that since he was poisoned, he behaved this way on purpose, he sadly said out loud to himself. But Adrien's father was not the only one who grieved. Sylvia also couldn't find a place for herself. Mom, don't be afraid for me. You know that I can stand up for myself. The son tried to calm his mother down. But what if Anna sends an assassin to you at the front? The woman continued to worry, but our hero believed that it would be even better. Let them commit as many crimes as possible, as this will make it easier to eliminate them in the future. What are you talking about? What if they hear us? Sylvia was worried about the intimacy of their conversation, but she might not be afraid. Adrien kept Aria on guard at the door to the bedroom, just in case, and the young man was no longer going to endure pressure from his father's first wife. Soon I will put an end to this. Please wait a little, the son asked the mother, looking into her tear-stained face. 2 days later, preparations for the assembly of the Lawrence army were in full swing. Young master, who is this lady? The butler under the name Harmon asked, rubbing his sweaty face with a napkin. Don't you know Aria? Adrien asked in response, rocking in his chair. He now wore a blue and white commander's suit with chevrons and shoulder pads. The companion also kept up with her owner, wearing a similar costume. I heard that this is the lady of your heart, but we are going to war, and I would not take my mistress there if I were you. Harmon continued to slightly insist, embarrassed, but trying not to show it. He, along with our hero and the rest of the army, were now traveling in a levitation train. While the butler was talking to our hero, a meeting was held in the conference room inside the train. This question is closed. Consider that she is my secretary. Adrien ordered without hinting at anything. Okay, if you insist, we understand. I try not to show that they don't really understand the younger Lawrence. Harmon agreed. Our hero simply could not leave Aria at home, because she is ready to protect him to the last drop. Moreover, recently the girl has improved very much, and is now very close in level to the highest knighthood, and the young man also needed to prepare for battle in order to protect himself. To this end, he lost 20 million gold in 2 days, thereby completing the 3rd level of the Unexpected Encounters quest. The guy didn't buy anything, even top-of-the-line equipment for the year. Now he was sure that money is power, and he was also not far from reaching the 4th level of awards. For the 3rd level, there were 3 rewards, each worth 100 billion years. The first was the Universal Panacea in triplicate. Now the elixirs lay and waited in his hidden storage. They were also a very timely reward. Even during the war, our hero remained a gambling addict and could no longer waste time, since the 4th level was waiting for him. I'll go to my room. If there is something important, write to messenger. Getting up from the table, he announced to the others. Right? The men asked in one voice. I'll go play online games, Adrien announced publicly again. Silence fell in the conference room. So do you have anything to object to? The young man asked. So they are telling the truth about you. Sir Dalton raised his voice as if stating a fact. The man was an officer of the advanced detachment. The Vanguard is a special squad equipped with magical armor and magical swords. They are the main driving force of any army, and they judge how strong the country is. Are you sure it's time for games? You will be looked at as a non-entity, Commander. Dalton continued to bombard him with questions. He had yellow eyes and chestnut brown hair and reminded Adrien of a hyena. Your reputation is not so great anyway. Now you brought a girl to the battle and are going to play games? Dalton continued to press. It seemed to the younger Lawrence that the man really wanted to stage a rebellion against the Lord's representative. However, I can still understand about the girl. She's beautiful. But then Dalton was interrupted. Sir, watch your language. Under the gaze of the man who intervened in the conversation, the officer calmed down. Mr. Adrien, I apologize for my subordinate. He has increased his powers. Deputy Captain of the Advanced Detachment Gilbert Billiam bowed slightly, placing his right hand to his heart. His light brown beard and hair gave courage to his face. We have a long road ahead. Everyone needs entertainment. The man justified the actions of the commander. That is, our hero. Although Adrien didn't think he was being sincere. You do not need to pay attention to the opinions of your subordinates, because you are a representative of His Grace the Viscount. Gilbert continued, but Adrien did not escape the fact that he didn't like him either, although the young man didn't care, because he was used to this. When it arrives, write to the messenger. Not wanting to stay with them all in the same room anymore, the young man left. The dragon breathed furiously, spewing sparks, but he failed to emerge victorious from the fight. The creature began to squirm in agony while Hadrian and Aria watched contentedly. Our hero's indispensable assistant in this quest was Tears of a Salamander. Its effectiveness lay in the fact that it immediately dealt 3,000 points of damage, and was an overly expensive bomb made from very valuable ingredients. She really is overly expensive. But 3,000 damage without mana costs is expensive. Looking at the dragon that had not yet passed into another world, the young man noticed. He was immensely pleased with this victory, since it promoted him along the playing career ladder. Thanks to his victory, he reached level 80, and the main god Ariel moved him to the next secret room. Great, this is a level 4 quest. Looking at the upcoming work and thinking through a plan of action, the younger Lawrence said out loud. Before him and his companion stood an unprecedentedly strong enemy, Polulich Emmers. His damage was 32,000. In appearance, he looked like a huge skeleton of a spirit, and red eyes sparkled from his skull. Here are my victims! The creature laughed, but Adrien set himself the goal of completing the 4th level before the levitation train reached the western mission. For the fact that the young man kills the half-lich Emerson, the 5th floor of the magic tower of Manuel Lucas will open to him. The young man knew a little about this creature. Liches are strong monsters and serious opponents. Only this one seemed somehow slow and stupid. While our guys were not taking any action, Emmers, with a magic wand, also in the form of a small skeleton, began to draw something on his magic circle. And he immediately summoned spears made of ice stone, and they flew like hail towards the young man. The half-lich castained without even waiting for them to get ready. This was something new in Adrien's experience as a player. Mister! Aria shouted, immediately rushing towards him, but she didn't have time. Adrien understood that he should be able to return, but he failed, and one of the spears pierced his right shoulder. How sweet is the sound of your broken bones and torn flesh. The monster laughed heart-rendingly. Falling onto the marble tiles, the younger Lawrence squeezed his wounded shoulder, as if trying to calm down the pain, because of which his mind was slightly clouded. He thought he would dodge, and also Polulich's face, his laughter, his demeanor, as if she was already familiar to him. A mocking and mocking Cedric. That's what she looked like. The realization of this truth seemed to awaken unprecedented anger in the young man. It was as if his strength came out of nowhere, and still slightly staggering, he stood up. Ha ha ha, stay still. Emmers threatened with his magic wand, causing a fireball. And it exploded safely. Only now Adrien and Aria passed him safely. The monster ran to the confused monster, who did not understand by what miracle they remained alive. Treatment, our hero cast a spell, while the enemy began to gradually lose damage. Aria, don't let him castan, Adrien commanded breathlessly. Understood, the girl immediately realized. The young man already knew in advance what he would have to face, so he specially purchased an enchanted weapon with a blessing effect for this purpose. Simply put, a magic wand with a magic crystal at the end, you can say a skipper. With his help, the likelihood of victory only increased. When the young man began to stab the half-lich with a blessed weapon, he began to scream heart-rendingly. Why are you fighting with a magic stick? The monster growled, causing a wall of fire. With this spell, he planned to put a barrier between him and his opponents, but imagine his surprise when it did not work. Or rather, the spell was cast. But Adrien went through it. "Freak! How did you break through the fire?" the monster growled. "Die!" Adrien interrupted his heart-rending thoughts, swinging his skipper. "Die, you freak who looks like Cedric!" With these words, the young man lowered the heavy head of the weapon onto the enemy's skull, breaking the bone. Now the fourth level of the Unexpected Encounters quest was completed, and it was wonderful. Only Adrien's health needed to be desired. He was suffocating. A continuous cough was escaping from his lungs, and he could not breathe. Exhausted, he fell to the floor. "Mister!" Aria shouted, throwing her shield. "They say that during a fight you don't feel pain because of the rush of adrenaline. But as soon as it all ends, she immediately makes herself known." While our hero could not even move from pain, Aria logged into the system and bought some medicine. She raised her master's head and poured liquid from the vessel into his mouth. Little by little, the young man felt better. It was incredible. A companion who independently opened her master's inventory. "Thank you, I feel much better," Adrien thanked from the bottom of his heart. Since he had fulfilled the conditions for opening the next floor of the tower, the fifth floor of Manuel Lucas's magic tower now opened its doors to him. It should be noted that with each floor the offices became more and more luxurious. There were more and more books, but one thing was constant. On each floor there was a chest. Just now our hero was running towards him. Having opened the chest, he received 50 billion loots. He needed to enter the account to which he would like to receive the amount. But that was not all. In the chest were glasses of all-round vision, although they looked like the most ordinary ones. But they couldn't be simple because it was from Manuel Lucas. In order to get to know the subject a little better, the young man opened the description. It said that they are a lie detector, allow you to see through obstacles, can magnify details, that is, see many kilometers into the distance. And if you look at a person through them, you can find out what he is feeling now, and in addition statistics and goals. Essentially, these glasses will help Adrien recognize enemies and friends. Such an item was indispensable for such a distrustful type like him. Meanwhile, the levitation train arrived at the Western Mission. Tents of various sizes were placed everywhere, with fires burning brightly near them. "What? The second son of Viscount Lawrence?" asked the people gathered at the commander's tent. "I thought that a bigger brother would come," one mumbled. "Yes, I think his name is Cedric. He was a genius from childhood and showed great promise. Picked up another person. This is not about Cedric, but about the younger one. I heard that after the poisoning, he became a fool." The first one corrected the second one, and Adrien, standing behind the curtains behind them, heard everything. "Yes, I am the same brother who was poisoned." Unable to listen to any more rumors about himself, our hero spoke up. "But I see that you are not a fool at all, Your Honor. Rumors are just rumors." They began to throw pink dust into the men's eyes. "Nice to meet you. I'm Viscount Evans, Chief of Staff of the Western Force." Trying to hush up the awkward scene, the first one introduced himself. "I'm Viscount Miller, Deputy Chief of Staff." The second one hurried after him. "It's an honor to meet you." Adrien pretended that nothing had happened. "Let's see how much military force you brought. 5 Vanguard officers and 5 knights?" Evans asked. "Yes, 5 Vanguard officers, 50 knights, and thousands of infantry." Our hero reported. The infantry doesn't have to be taken into account. The officers of the Vanguard will decide the outcome of this war." Miller entered the conversation. "The elite, armed with magical artifacts, this is the kind of army the Kingdom of Rhaengar assembled. Only a magician of at least the 7th Circle can deal with an officer of the Vanguard." Unfortunately, Miller says everything correctly. As far as the younger Lawrence understood, it was Archduke Lucas who introduced the officers of the advanced detachment into military practice. Your fighters are integrated into the army as a second separate brigade, part of the 3rd Division. Your brigade commander, Count Otis. Miller conveyed instructions. "It seems that Earl Otis was the great lord of the East." "I understood you." Our hero nodded his head in agreement. After negotiations with the Viscounts, he went out to his military company. "Now you are the 2nd separate brigade," he told them. "I hope that Count Otis will not interfere with him too much." Driven by this thought, he went back into the tent and naturally, in order to plunge into the world of the game. A week later, Adrien was admired by Commander Otis while Aria helped him hunt monsters. For a young man in his situation, the best brigade commander is the commander, who is not there all the time. Before the outbreak of hostilities, the Count minded his own business, despite the outbreak of war, and greeted the others through teleportation. Otis's actions were inexplicable, but the younger Lawrence was free to play while he was away. But then something happened that made the people around him change their minds about the youngest son of Viscount Lawrence. Adrien looked at his achievements. A little more and he would be on the 5th lap. "Mister, someone came into your room," Aria reported. Worried, the young man immediately left the game. Aria grabbed the hand of the troublemaker while Adrien came to his senses. Sir Dalton appeared before him in person. "Hey, why are you so strong?" The man tried to free his hand from the girl's death grip, but he failed. Looking at the unwanted guest, our hero wondered, what does he need? And he began to check the effectiveness of the glasses. It turned out Dalton was extremely agitated emotionally. "You better explain yourself." Adrien rushed out of bed and went to the intruder. "I was just concerned about your condition. You've been in the game too long." Dalton tried to justify himself. "And this girl came up herself." The man continued to turn the arrows from himself to others, and immediately received a strong slap in the face. "For what?" Dalton howled. "I told you. Write to the messenger if something serious happens. And Aria is not here for a reason. She is on guard. Better tell the truth. You entered the brigade commander's room without permission. For what? To kill me?" Adrien glared at the man with a cold gaze. "What are you talking about? Who do you think I am? I'm actually a frontline officer." Dalton turned on the offended. "Then find a more convincing explanation, worm." Adrien didn't believe him. 3 privates rushed to respond to the screams. Our hero asked the only witness, Aria, about why everything happened while he was in the game. It turned out Dalton wanted to split it. That is, at first, having a presentiment that the girl would become an obstacle to him, he wanted to drag her somewhere. Gradually, the man began to feel uneasy from the exposure. "Are you trying to set me up, young lord? Do you think that the word of some rootless bitch is higher than the word of an officer?" He became furious. Observing his reaction, Adrien realized that most likely those 3 behind the officer's back were clearly on his side. "You are violating discipline, but no, you are trying to start a rebellion, right?" the young man suggested, taking the dagger that Aria always carried with her, and he pointed the weapon directly at the officer's stomach. "Come here, step forward," ordered the younger Lawrence. "Seriously," Dalton quipped. The way the commander tried to pretend to be strong and independent made me laugh. "Please, calm down." Trinity waved her hands behind him. Adrien was quiet, not because he was kind, but because he wanted to survive. Now Anna will not be able to follow him, and he will no longer give in. "I'll calm you down now," the young man said ominously. Fate itself gave him a chance to show his power, and he was not going to miss this chance. "Deputy Commander Billiam, the brigadier orders you to appear urgently," a soldier reported at the entrance to the tent. Gilbert was not very happy to hear this heart-rending scream in the afternoon. He felt so good, and now someone wants to pull him out. "The foreman says that he is going to execute Dalton. Please hurry up," the servant urged. After realizing the depth of the problem, Billiam finally came to his senses. He arrived just in time. Entering the commander's room, he managed to intercept the dagger flying past by the hilt. Having glanced at him, he was frightened. There was already fresh blood on the weapon. "Didn't I ask you to hurry up?" Adrien made a claim to the confused deputy. The man decided to leave the question unanswered, looking at the officer curled up on the floor. "Let me ask you, Your Honor, what does it mean?" Gilbert asked, looking around and assessing the situation. Naturally, he did not arrive alone. 2 more privates stood behind him. "A knight who harasses girls is not a knight at all for me. What do you think, deputy?" Adrien immediately got down to business. Having heard the reason for the possible execution, a wave of anger covered Billiam's face. "What have you done, puppies?" he menacingly addressed the violators. "It's my fault, sorry." The deputy apologized, bowing at the commander's feet. Now, by his order, Officer Dalton was removed from office. His equipment was taken and sent to prison. Finally, leaving the tent, Gilbert kicked him for personal pleasure, and the Trinity, who allowed the officer into the private room of the younger Lawrence, was sent there too, since they were accomplices. Our hero liked his decision, and he agreed with such a punishment. Adrien patted Billiam on the shoulder encouragingly, while the man still did not believe what was happening. The young man didn't like the smell of blood, so he went into another room, having managed to order that this one be cleaned up. Looking after him, the deputy became thoughtful. "So that's what you are like," he said barely audibly, putting himself in the place of our hero. Surely it was difficult for the young man to endure and not show who he really was. Before entering the game, Adrien lay contentedly in bed for a couple of minutes. After a long time, the good boy turned bad. The clang of metal, light sparks, and difficult breathing, that's right, the younger Lawrence was defeating another monster. This time he was the Dark Knight of Zenith. He kept hitting the blind spot and managed to keep his distance. The young man then managed to hide behind the assistant's shield. But from 45,000 damage, the knight had only 12 left, and the battle was resolved in favor of our hero. But the monster was still strong and now prepared to deliver a crushing final blow. Possessing magic, Adrien managed to cast a protective spell. Therefore the blow went through the air. While the knight was wondering what had happened, Aria began to rapidly carry blows, thereby reducing his damage, and the last few thousands seemed to melt under the pressure of Adrien's magic wand. Before he had time to disappear into thin air after defeat, the knight said sadly, "I'm just a means for you to raise your level, right?" After his death, the 6th floor of the magic tower of Manuel Lucas was opened for Adrien, and the chest was many times larger than the previous ones. Jewelry, coins, treasures shone in the casket. Another nice bonus was 2 trillion loots. As always, the monetary reward was a pleasure. But that was not all. When the system informed the young man about this, he was extremely surprised, since all the awards were given out immediately. He was given a whole set of magical things: a staff, a robe, armor, a shield, a sword, and Istro's 2-handed sword. The younger Lawrence, after thinking about it, decided that he would keep the staff and the robe for himself, and give the rest to Aria, because new equipment is always good, and Archmage Lucas always gives the best. Adrien still planned to do so much, but he urgently needed to return to the real world. "Allow me to address you, Brigadier." A subordinate entered the room. "I felt the presence of strong energy," the man reported. It was understandable, since his job was to protect the commander, and then energy came out of nowhere. "I was just rummaging through my artifacts. Don't worry." Adrien waved it off, flaunting the ring of the protective field that his father had given him. Having made sure that everything was fine, the private left. Our hero was not happy that he was disturbed, but at the same time he admired the good security. Returning to the virtual world, the young man hurried to quickly familiarize himself with the equipment he had received. As he thought, he was given a magic sword, which is used by the officers of the advanced detachment. If we go into history, Lucas forged this magical sword as a reward for the quest Unexpected Encounters. There is also a core inside the sword containing magical energy. This allowed the owner to use it without skills, but the energy of the core was only enough for 15 seconds of battle. If you charge a weapon like a battery, even a weakling can use the power of a frontline officer. The Vanguard officer's magical equipment is designed to increase his power, unlike mana, since the aura cannot be artificially created. Adrien wondered if all the equipment for the mage also had such abilities. With this thought, he looked into the storage room. And I was right, the staff and robe could also store aura. The young man was incredibly happy about such luck, and now understood why everyone so wanted to snatch the fate of Archmage Lucas. However, it was already evening and he had to return. 2 weeks have already passed since Adrien was appointed representative of the House of Lawrence and was preparing an army for battle against the Kreutzen Empire. The feeling that a military conflict was about to begin was dulled, and the army stood idle. And therefore any order from Adrien was immediately carried out by the Axis. After the incident with Dalton, everyone began to fear the young man. As soon as he appeared, everyone immediately tried to be quieter than water and lower than the grass. Although it was good for our hero, let them know what he is like. Unlike the others, Billiam suddenly began to respect the younger Lawrence. Looking at the man through his magic glasses, the young man saw that the deputy was extremely interested in him, and also cautious. But none of this mattered. The main thing was that Adrien would not be disturbed during the game. And now he and Arcee were heading straight to his room. Walking slowly, he looked at his companion and was slightly stunned. In the line about emotions, her characteristics said that she was happy. But she is an artificial machine in human form. Well, okay, we'll miss this moment. So why is she happy? Because the girl went out for a walk with Adrien? Then she's just like a puppy. Yes, it turns out that even the homunculus has emotions. Adrien doesn't even know anything about her, and the girl has no character. unless there are things she likes and doesn't like, but she doesn't show it. It's been a while since our hero has been far from human civilization. The young man stopped for a while, getting used to the bright sunlight and cool fresh air. The world that opened up to him and his companion was beautiful. Butterflies fluttered everywhere and birdsong flowed from everywhere. Small rodents darted here and there, and the greenery was pleasantly pleasing to the eye. Junior Lawrence looked carefully at Aria. Now she was very happy. Reading her emotion, Adrien choked slightly. He didn't think that the surrounding natural splendor would affect her so much. Having returned back to the military unit, the young man promised that now they will go for walks more often. The girl also agreed with him, but suddenly a young man crossed Adrien's path. What's happened? The commander began to worry. Taking a deep breath into his chest, the man suggested, "Would you like to have a drink with me, Foreman?" From the emotions, the man felt shame, and looking at the couple of soldiers standing behind him, it was clear why. "Did they talk you into it?" Adrien asked, pointing to the soldiers. And without waiting for an answer, he walked past the young man, showing with all his appearance that he would not do such a thing. But suddenly one thought visited his bright head. "Why do you even bear the title of knight?" he asked the young man face to face. I apologize for the insult, but it was too much." The foreman, stuttering slightly, tried to put the younger Lawrence in his place. That's not what Adrien meant, though. For all the time, possessing all seeing glasses except Aria, the young man had never met anyone with two whole high talents, as the officer had. The man had a rare special trait and great talent for magic. Then why does he allow himself to be bullied? Although this was not Adrien's concern besides, the officer was not from his unit and not from his division. "I'm sorry, but you could achieve much more if you became a magician," our hero suggested. His words made the officer's heart beat faster, because he was extremely rarely praised. Before he knew it, the younger Lawrence turned his back on him, ordering the rest of the guys not to bother him anymore, and walked away, leaving the man completely confused. Our hero did not want problems, and did not stand up for the officer, but still how much benefit his talent could have brought. If you gave this man the equipment of a vanguard officer, he would become a battle mage. Of course, talent is not everything, but he became a knight at such a young age, and he has a chance. What could he have achieved then? The young man could help the officer and take him under his wing, but Count Otis is an obstacle to this. After all, Alan Lopez, the officer who offered him a drink, was from another county. So first Adrien needs permission from Count Otis. One of the options was to bribe him, because the Count doesn't seem to mind bribing. The young man did not know how useful high and very high talents are, but he needs to start assembling his team. So, out of the blue, our hero made a decision, and now was the time for this, since he was away from the influence of his stepmother. "I know what we will do. We have a lot to do," Adrien said, putting on all-seeing glasses, full of determination. The statement, of course, was addressed to Aria. Alan walked slightly excitedly. It was not often that Count Otis himself wanted to see him in his chambers. Adrien Lawrence's words about how he could achieve much more if he were a magician were firmly lodged in his head. At first the officer thought that the commander was just an arrogant nobleman, but when the young man said that he should be a magician, not a knight, he changed his mind. After all, I also thought about this myself, and was a little shocked. "Commander Otis, I arrived on your orders," Alan announced, stopping at the entrance to the Count's chamber. "Your Grace, did you call me?" As soon as the doors opened in front of the young man, he remembered the commander. "Come in, Sir Lopez." The Count greeted him. Opposite him, leaning against the back of the sofa, drinking tea, sat Adrien. His presence slightly embarrassed the knight. Standing closer to the Count, he wondered, for what purpose was he called? "You probably already know, but this is a representative of the Lawrence family, Brigadier Adrien Lawrence." Introduced, the son of Viscount Otis. After a short pause, he continued. "Sir Lopez, from now on Adrien will be your lord. Serve him faithfully." Alan couldn't believe his ears. This couldn't happen. Our hero remembered one incident from his life when China lost to South Korea in football. After the loss, one fan wondered, is it really possible that in China, among a population of 1,040,000,000 people, there weren't 11 good football players? He was told that they couldn't find them because the Chinese Messi or Ronaldo was rummaging around in the ground somewhere on a farm. The moral is this: no matter how much talent a person has, if he does not have a social ladder, then his talent will be lost. First, Adrien bought one officer, and then it went from there. Who knew that so many young people were wasted? The first, as you already know, was the failed knight of Count Otis, Alan Lopez. Next walked the peasant laborer Barnabas Anderson. The third was one of the few soldiers, trumpeter Eric Jones, who plays a musical instrument. Next on the list was a cheeky boy who was caught selling erotic magazines to Nicole Brown's soldiers. Next was a maid from the neighboring regiment, Linda Noah. All of them were gifted with talents, but they followed the wrong path and therefore achieved nothing in life. Sorry, Brigadier Adrien. The maid Linda distracted our hero from his thoughts. Do you really think that I can become a sorceress? I took the test and it did not confirm my abilities. The girl did not believe in her capabilities. The problem is probably in the equipment on which you were tested. Adrien tried to calm the girl's excitement. But Linda began to come up with obstacles again. She was still not confident in herself, although Adrien saw that the girl had high mana, learning ability, and intelligence. No buts! To get her, I had to buy her from the owner and give a few more bribes. Our hero thought slightly irritably. Although he was rich, the very thought that he had to ransom people made him gloomy. But Adrien understands that no one will understand his actions now, and they carried out his orders because he pays them for it. There is no need for doubt, Linda. We must do what the owner tells us. Barnabas approached the former maid. This guy was very physically gifted. Nicole, the only minor, came up with him, and our hero planned to make knights out of both. Varna wasted his time working in the mines. The younger Lawrence did not know why the handyman willingly listened to him. Well, has everyone chosen their outfits? Adrien addressed all his subordinates. Now this group of guys with their leader were 100 kilometers away in the royal palace, in the haute couture studio of the royal palace. Not only the clothes, but also the store building itself was made in the best style, both outside and inside. Looking at the guys, Adrien noticed that they were all confused and had obviously never been to such an expensive and pretentious place. Eric Jones was the first to choose his suit. The dark blue tailcoat fit him perfectly, emphasizing his stately figure. Eric had gray hair in his youth, which was extremely rare. I will serve you faithfully, sir, the young man swore. His talents were leadership and management, and he also knew how to persuade. In fact, such talents were even more rare and useful than magic and fencing. I ask you, ladies and gentlemen, do not look at the price tag. Just choose what suits you. Adrien continued to convince and encourage his players. Slowly, the guys scattered around the studio. Alan Lopez, for example, chose a black military suit with gold accents, despite the fact that he was no longer a soldier. At this time, Nicole Browns decided to try out the terribly soft chair, and Linda tried on light-colored dresses with lace. If you don't nurture all the children's talents, they will remain in the ground. Our hero planned to send them for training, each of which would receive a special approach. But first of all, they must dress appropriately for their new environment, and also equip themselves accordingly. After a while, when the choice of clothes was finished, Adrien and his charges changed the location. Now the guys looked enthusiastically with all their eyes at the building that opened before them. Is this where we will live and study, sir? Eric asked when the first wave of shock passed. Right, Adrien confirmed as the butlers sorted out their luggage. The young man also appointed a servant for the boys. Now, from that moment on, his students had to direct all their strength and attention only to their studies. Junior Lawrence will pay them benefits, including compensation for dismissal from work. Their monthly allowance of 20 million loots per year is 240 million. The terms of their contracts were the same regardless of their origin. As soon as our hero explained all these nuances and conditions, the guys began receiving money transfers into their bank accounts. Having made sure that they were not being lied to, all 5 lined up as if on command. We will do everything to exceed your expectations, Your Grace, they promised, saluting. If you prove to me that I was not mistaken about you, then your salaries will increase. Adrien promised in response, looking at the devoted faces with a smile. He understood that perhaps they would not grow as quickly in science as they would like. For a few seconds, the younger Lawrence fell silent, searching for the right words. Do everything you can so as not to let me down. I hope you will live in harmony and not disappoint me with quarrels, our hero suggested, smiling. We obey, the guys promised again, but that was not all. If someone tries to lure them with money, then the guys should not hesitate to tell their master about it. As a reward, he will give them twice as much as anyone offers, because he wants to reward their loyalty. This educational institution in which Adrien will place them will be a haven for his protégés, and the young man must do everything to ensure that their talents develop. It is quite possible that our hero forked out money, But in fact, this is an investment in the future, an investment in quality personnel. But then evening came, and this crazy day was coming to an end. Walking through the streets of the town, Adrien was thinking, Anna. He needed to protect his mother from her. When the young man openly goes against Cedric, he will need to hide her, something like a safe prison. The young man needed to find something like this place before returning to camp. Suddenly, his thoughts were interrupted by some suspicious shadow in the place where they had just passed. Before he had time to do anything, Aria grabbed her pursuer by the throat and pinned him against the wall, while the suspicious stranger was coughing, trying to extricate himself from Aria's strong arms. Adrien walked up to the man with a model gait, examining him and at the same time putting together a puzzle in his head. Our hero didn't know how Cedric knew that he was gathering commoners under his wing, but his older brother called in the middle of the night and told him, "That's right. So communicate with the same rabble as you yourself." Thus, with his call, he admitted that he was watching every step of his younger brother. "Brigadier, what does this mean?" the stranger asked, stuttering. "First, tell me how you found me. You teleported out of the royal palace. I was sure that we were being followed." Adrien demanded an explanation in response. "Yes, I have no idea what you are talking about." The stranger tried to brush off suspicions, but immediately stopped short when he saw that the younger Lawrence pulled out a knife. Adrien realized that this man was Cedric's spy and clearly not the only one. With one jerk, Aria lifted the stranger into the air and threw him to the ground, holding him tightly by the collar. "Do you want to live?" Our hero asked the most simple and specific question. Hearing the man cough affirmatively, he demanded that he then answer the questions. In fact, the man was frightened as much by the younger Lawrence himself as by his companion. The man was unable to increase his aura in order to free himself. Is the girl really an aura expert? Then it turns out that she is a difficult girl, and if he doesn't speak, he will certainly be killed. And here in this remote alley they are unlikely to find him. "Wait, I'll tell you everything," the stranger screamed desperately. With a dagger put to his throat, the man told everything. "So you found me because Cedric has another rat in the teleportation office," Adrien commented on the story, looking into the stranger's face. The spy probably didn't lie after all. Maybe for a better effect it's worth scaring him? "I knew that Cedric was sending spies to me, but there is something interesting," said our hero. "What?" the stranger asked, trying not to irritate the younger Lawrence. "You followed Cedric's orders, but you have nothing against me, as if you didn't want to do this." Our hero stated the fact, putting away the dagger. The fact that now there was no bladed weapon near the stranger's neck made him incredibly happy, but he did not dare to run away, because he understood that Aria would immediately overtake him. "I think you are ready to go against your master, aren't you?" Adrien continued to press. The spy was about to gently object when the young man appeared next to him with lightning speed, pointing a dagger right between his eyes. "Enough. Do you want to live or not?" he asked for the last time. "Yes," the pursuer whined. "The only condition that will allow him to live is if he works for the younger Lawrence." There was nothing complicated about it. It was necessary to simply send him the readings every day, and report to Cedric that his younger brother was doing the same thing as always. Expecting a decisive answer, our hero pressed the dagger against the spy's forehead, leaving scratches. But when I heard an affirmative agreement to cooperate, I removed the weapon. Meanwhile, in the estate of Viscount Lawrence, the walls shook from the scream. "What? Sir Metz went to jail for espionage?" Cedric couldn't believe his ears. Yes, unfortunately he was caught right in the foreman's room. This caused a lot of problems. Continued to be heard from the wristwatch, playing the role of a telephone and receiving calls. But all this happened because Cedric did not listen to his father's punishment and continued to send spies. Now, the Viscount will be furious, because he promised Adrien that there would be no snowballs after him. Cedric grabbed his head, realizing how much wood he had chopped. "It's a pity, but I have no choice. Until my father stops being angry with me, you will have to look after Adrien." The elder brother punished. "Yes, sir." The reporter obeyed the order, but Cedric had no idea that Adrien and Aria were watching all this from the sidelines, and they had already caught the rest of the spies and treated them like Dalton. "I won't let him take away my status," our hero promised himself. His talent gathering went like clockwork. Adrien now had 20 very gifted recruits under his command. Standing above them all was Eric Jones and Alicia, a half-elf and former administrator of Allied Affairs. They are quite capable of taking care of his young talents. But the very irony in all this was that everyone is working so hard so that Adrien can calmly kick his butts. That is, play. For example, now there is one more level, and he will be a magician of the sixth circle. The young man planned to hang out in the game a little more, but the events happening in reality did not allow him. The game system sent him a message saying that a state of emergency had been declared, and the division commander announced an urgent order. It is quite possible that they have an emergency there. Adrien left the game with lightning speed, because he is now close to the front line. What's happened? Coming out of his room, he asked a passing officer. The heavenly fortress of the Croydon Empire has crossed the border, Your Grace. Now we are waiting for details, the man blurted out in one breath. Our hero did not expect such news. Was it really just the calm before the storm? The news that the opponents had made their move spread like lightning throughout all military units. An urgent meeting was held in the council room on the train. Since our forces have been given the order to survive, let's load the fighters onto the Leviathan train so that they are ready to move out at any moment. For now, they will eat and sleep inside the train, suggested Count Otis. Adrien was afraid that he would not find the division commander here. From now on, portable coordinates are being intercepted along the entire front between us and the Croydons. So don't even think about moving, it's suicide. The Count continued to think out loud. The fact that the opponents attacked in the daytime was very good, because if Otis had been outside the camp again, then these events would have forced them without a division commander, and would have had to plan everything themselves. I prohibit all types of communications for soldiers, except for the rank of colonel and above. Soldiers will communicate using a walkie-talkie, the division commander ordered. This news did not please Adrien. This concerns you too. Be careful. The Count openly hinted at our hero, although he had no intention of stopping playing games. The war has begun! Everyone be on high alert! Divisional Commander Otis ordered, standing up abruptly and slamming his hands on the table. Eat! The rest of the officers and commanders immediately stood up. The war has begun, and our hero was ready to use this chance. But as soon as the meeting ended, Adrien immediately reached level 160. In order to reach such heights, he had to kill the two-headed ogre monster. Looking at the corpse of the monster, the young man hoped that now he should definitely receive the sixth circle of magic. His butler, when he heard that the younger Lawrence was going to play the online game anyway, immediately began to moralize him. But Adrien reminded him that no one would know about this if someone did not wag their tongues. Our hero understood that this was certainly not good for everyone, but the game was very important to him. As always, when reaching a new level, the player received money. At level 160, he was credited with 10 billion loot, and the amount will be transferred to his account at the Union Bank of Elysia. But that was not all. Although the young man is noticeably unaccustomed to unusual awards, he was provided with an additional satellite, the Black Supersonic Eagle. The eagle was like an eagle, nothing unusual, except that it was gigantic in size. Its wingspan filled the entire room. But does this really happen? In this game, he already has one companion. He heard that the archer class has eagles as companions, but he has a different hero. Although, stop guessing. It's better to find out about this eagle in real life. With this thought, Adrien left the game. Imagine his surprise when he, lying in his bed, did not see him nearby. Although, perhaps the bird is just on the street? Driven by this idea, the young man hurried to go outside the train. Walking past the saluting soldiers, Adrien thought. He believed that this giant black eagle would appear in the room like Aria. But then he would have problems, because he would not be able to explain the appearance of the bird in his bedroom. After a couple of minutes, Aria heard the sound of moving wings. Here it is, she guessed, pointing to the sky with her index finger. Seeing his master, the eagle immediately began to approach. "Bend down, foreman!" the soldiers shouted, grabbing their weapons. The wind that the bird brought with its wings was so strong that some soldiers, driven by fear, fell into the water. Yeah, the eagle's appearance was truly epic. Slowly, step by step, leaving scratches on the metal, the bird began to approach Adrien. The frightened soldiers were about to use weapons, but the younger Lawrence did not allow them. Black Supersonic Eagle. He was a chimera and had strong bones with skin like those of dragons. It was very difficult for him to inflict damage, even with a magic sword, but he had only one skill, universal vision. Aria becomes stronger as our hero becomes stronger. He needs to know how to unlock the skills of this bird. Surely this is due to the passage of levels, as indeed always. The young man approached the eagle, stroking its head. The bird closed its eyes blissfully from the caress. Adrien didn't know what the vertical dive did, but general vision seemed like a useful skill. Excellent overview at the speed of light. What could be better? Brigadier, the soldier turned to the thoughtful young man. What kind of monster is this? The subordinates gently demanded an explanation. The young man slightly reproached himself. He was so focused on the eagle that he did not notice how many onlookers had gathered. It seemed that he had no other choice. He extended his second hand towards the bird. "Do you want to come with me?" he asked affectionately. The eagle trustingly followed him gently like a cat, shaking its head against him. Probably in his language it meant yes. But why doesn't the bird attack? And even fawning on him? This is certainly something. The soldiers began to whisper among themselves. If only they knew how Adrien felt now, arranging this whole performance in order to explain the appearance of the eagle. And he was a little afraid that he might later regret it. The war began immediately in full swing, not with targeted clashes, but with full-scale hostilities along the entire western border. War of destruction. How many weapons, how many human lives have already been lost in just a few days? Thanks to military operations, Adrien's brigade was fully engaged, and since there was no communication, he could not enter the game. That's why I sat in the waiting room all the time, watching what was happening, drinking tea. Aria was by his side as always. "The advanced detachment of the Kreutzens is approaching," the officer reported, running up to the foreman. "Don't panic, retreat and regroup. Give Billiam the order to advance." Our hero immediately came up with a plan of action. His face was absolutely calm. "Eat." The officer accepted the order. Even though these are just games, from monsters Adrien still learned not to fear for his life, and this skill has helped him a lot now, thereby encouraging those around him. An officer stood at his right shoulder. Looking at the young man's behavior, he seemed to be trying to solve an inexplicable riddle for himself. "What?" Our hero turned to him. "No, nothing, sir." Turning away, the man denied, but then even Adrien's calm left him. The advanced detachment of the enemy struck. "Listen to my command. Deploy energy shields over the train." Adrien immediately gave instructions. The rank and file, still not understanding anything, began to carry out the task. After a couple of seconds, the energy shields were deployed. A little more and they would not have made it in time, since the magical battle ball would have overtaken the train. But he collided with an energy shield and an explosion occurred. A shockwave passed through the train and those on board almost lost their balance. Such a blow from a distance. This was not just reconnaissance in force. Without the magician of the seventh circle, it became obvious which of the two sides would win. "Report the situation," Adrien ordered, instantly getting his bearings. "Break through the energy shield. 90 seconds to reload." One of the privates immediately responded. "With one blow, the advanced detachment took out our shield. Archduke Lucas, why didn't you make better equipment for Reinhardt? This is too much." Our hero groaned to himself. But they should not be afraid of the enemy's vanguard, because if Adrien reaches the maximum level in the game, he will be a magician of the ninth circle. In addition, he has one Grandmaster Knight in his service, that is, an analog of the magician of the eighth circle. Aria, known to us. "Is everything all right, sir?" Aria became worried, coming a little closer and taking his hand. She looked into his eyes. The young man shook his head negatively. "This time it passed. If it weren't for you, we would have been blown to pieces here." One of the officers thanked. "I'm lucky." Adrien turned the arrows to the blessing of fate. "You are being modest, Your Honor." The officer noticed the brigadier's embarrassment. "Look, I didn't pull your tongue." Our hero answered him silently, and he turned to the screens on which the actions on the battlefield were broadcast. The strength of both sides was approximately equal. Another thing is that the opponents have a heavenly fortress. The Kreuzen Empire had 2 sky fortresses, but they were much smaller than Rheingard. Apparently they were hastily produced specifically for a military invasion. The officer reported that, as far as they knew, this was the first flight of such sky fortresses from the enemy. In war, it's usually like this. There's a vanguard on the ground, and heavenly fortresses in the sky. At the moment, there was no attack on the ground, but something was clearly brewing in the sky. They are serious. Observing the actions of his opponents, Adrien stated the fact, looking at all this through the prism of all-seeing glasses. But then he began to notice something strange. First, The weapons and bridge systems were disconnected, and in the end they just fell to the ground. This is how the opponents lost one of the fortresses. Ha ha! What's wrong with him? Just think, the wheel fell off. Watching the behavior of their foreman behind his back, the rest of the officers chuckled, and Adrien watched with all his eyes the actions on the battlefield. The concentration of magical energy there increased, and this worried him. He didn't understand what exactly was there, but he felt that it shouldn't be this way. Stop! Suddenly he realized what was going on. Tell our heavenly fortress immediately. These parts of the fortress will explode, he said, almost shouting, and the wheels continued to fall. As our hero expected, very little time passed, and those parts in which magical energy was concentrated exploded. Meanwhile, in the sky fortress of Rheingart, the soldiers fought desperately for their lives. What? Self-detonation? They didn't believe the information that came through. Quickly convey. We are retreating. Others picked up. Adrien shouted with all his might, since extraneous sounds prevented the radio from conveying everything in its original form. Hit the opponents with anti-aircraft missile systems, with machine guns, with anything. Just shoot them down. But they didn't succeed. The sky fortress of the Kreutzen Empire was about to crash into the train where the follower of Manuel Lucas was located. Waving the ring of protective field given by his father, Adrien summoned a large shield spell. Fortunately, he made it in time, and the train remained intact without any damage, although there was a small shockwave that shook the young man. But if he had not used his father's ring, then they would all have been blown to pieces. Having come to his senses, Adrien immediately began to wonder what was happening with the heavenly fortress. But she managed to fly to the side, and it was very good. If the opponents had brought down their heavenly fortress to the ground, then everyone who survived would still have been finished off. Find out what's happening to our vanguard and take care of the wounded. He gave instructions to the lounging privates scurrying back and forth, while Adrien was all calm. But this crazy day has come to an end. Count Otis's face was so magnanimous that it seemed like he was about to kiss everyone here. Brigadier Lawrence, thank you very much. You did a great job today. He praised the young man. You flatter me, your lordship. Adrien modestly answered him. Don't tell me you're nobles. If you had not noticed the approaching kamikaze attack in time, we would have suffered colossal losses. The enemy used this tactic at the same time in other sectors of the front, and we are the only ones who survived. How did you sense something was wrong in advance and avoid losing the heavenly fortress? While the deputy head continued to praise, the young man only modestly smiled at him in response. And the Count has already managed to inform the general staff that today's victory was won thanks to him, so now he can count on a good reward. It is my duty as a senior in rank to ensure that my subordinates are rewarded for their achievements. This is exactly what Otis thought, although in his place many would have tried to appropriate the victory of their subordinates to themselves. Perhaps the Count is just a good person. However, enlighten me about this, Your Honor. There are amazing rumors about you. The commander suddenly changed the topic of conversation. The young man stared at him in surprise. However, he himself already guessed. Everywhere they only said that he managed to shorten the unusual giant eagle. The soldiers claimed that he found a common language with the bird unusually easily. I don't know where they got the idea, but this bird was really very smart. She seemed to understand everything I was saying. I began to communicate with her because, you understand, she is a very interesting creature. Our hero tried to explain what happened. Ha ha. But this is what it means to find a common language. This means that the eagle really understands your speech. Interesting. The Count laughed, patting the foreman on the shoulder. Giant black ornal, you say? Perhaps this is a species of altair eagles from the holy city of Everhill. These birds are born with a high level of mana and can fly up to 5,000 kilometers, said one of those present. What are you talking about? Lawrence admired the youngest, although he knew everything about the Altairs. They say that if someone manages to tame Altair, he will never betray and will be ready to protect his master even at the cost of his own life. The man continued, while Adrien at this time silently thanked the magician Lucas for making this chimera in the likeness of a real eagle. Otherwise he would have had problems explaining 100 times what kind of unusual creature was following him. Really? Isn't it funny, gentlemen? An eagle that looks like a dog. Otis tried to joke. Your Grace, the enemy has already retreated. Can I now use the connection? Feeling like a star, our hero decided to slightly extract benefits for himself, and he immediately received the Count's consent as a reward. The news made Adrien incredibly happy, because finally he would be able to go play the game and raise his level. A few days later, the second week of the war was already underway. One of the small detachments of the Kingdom of Ryengard, that is, from the military unit of Hadrian, went out on reconnaissance. Their military uniform was different from what we, people from Earth, were used to. The suits were somewhat reminiscent of spacesuits, only they were more durable and multifunctional. Sir Billiam, the enemy is unlikely to appear in the open. He will definitely not come from the mountains. This could be a trap. Keep your distance, and when you spot an enemy, start the fight with a long-range weapon. Came from the radio. Not so long ago, no one would have even thought of listening to Brigadier Lawrence, but now everyone relied only on him. Did you hear everything? Gilbert addressed the others. Don't rely on radar signals. Keep your distance, as the foreman said. The soldiers immediately agreed with him, and the deputy thought about how many changes in people had occurred at the beginning of the war. However, they fell into a trap. All 5 soldiers were surrounded by enemy forces. "We retreat!" Billiam immediately ordered, fighting off the enemy. It was incredible. The opponents came out of the ground, where the radar could not detect them. It's good that they moved carefully, as Brigadier Adrien suggested, because if they had walked without fear, they would have already killed them all. But the situation was getting worse. The guys were lucky that they were still alive. But every minute it became more and more difficult. The enemy was twice as large as them, and the Reinhardt soldiers needed to hold it back until reinforcements arrived. In terms of time, it will take about 5 minutes to travel, and they will not be able to hold out for these 5 minutes without losses. "Sir Billiam, you are breaking through," came from the radio. Suddenly there was a flash of light. The exhausted 5 happily glanced towards the light. These 10 officers of the advance party under the command of Earl Otis arrived. But how did they manage? Did the Count really know that this would happen and called for reinforcements in advance? "Sir Billiam, why are you lounging there? Why don't you go on the attack?" Adrien made a claim. It turned out that they had pinned the enemy forces to the mountains. "Seriously?" the deputy asked. He was greatly surprised by the young man's calm voice. How dare he even say that he was chilling here? "It was not easy for me to get reinforcements for you, sir, so handle at least 5 units while you're there." Adrien continued to give orders, slightly sarcastically. "Do you know that under the command of Brigadier Lawrence they destroyed 5 enemy units?" the officer reported at the meeting in the conference room. "Ha, he's just incredible." It was as if he foresaw the machinations of the enemy and turned what could have been a bitter defeat into victory. Other units suffer losses, but Lawrence's brigade contributes to the war every day. Picked up another military man. Listening to the reports of the officers, Count Otis was thinking. At first he thought it was just luck, but after so many times he couldn't talk about luck. But they said about Adrien that in childhood he was a genius, and after the poisoning he became useless. In essence, he turned out to be a hibernating dragon that has now awakened. "Gentlemen, how old is our brigadier? Isn't he the same age as my Michel? His family has already given up on him as far as I know, but I would gladly take him for myself." Taking a sip from a cup of tea, Otis asked Adrien's age. "Excuse me?" A cry rose in the office. The officers couldn't believe their ears. "I heard that the foreman already has a mistress, your lordship. He was so inseparable from her that he even brought her to war," one of the officers reported, having recovered from shock. "Yes, what problems? The main thing is that his official wife is my darling Michelle," the Count answered, smiling. "But he's a gambling addict, your lordship." The officers continued to try to dissuade him from this idea. "Gamer, you say? In my opinion, this is in every way better than a drunkard, drug addict, or slut." Otis continued to press his point. The officers sighed heavily. If the Count has already noticed Adrien as a son-in-law, then they will not convince him. "Your Grace, first we advise you to wait a little to see how the younger Lawrence shows himself," the military personnel advised. "Yes, Lady Michelle has a fiery temper. If she finds out, we're all screwed." The other agreed with the first officer. But what is true is true. Lady Michelle is indeed quite hot-tempered. For a moment there was silent agreement in the office. "Well, okay, gentlemen. Send reports to the general staff and we'll finish for today. And don't forget to mention the feat of our foreman." Otis interrupted the awkward pause and dismissed everyone to their business. At this time, our hero and his companion were walking along the train. Suddenly they called out to him, "Do you have a minute?" Aria was already preparing to deal a crushing blow to the innocent pursuer, when Adrien stopped her, walking towards the meeting. "Just be kind, hurry up," the young man asked Sir Billiam. In relation to Adrien, the man used to be curious and cautious, but now he is well-disposed and calm, and also anticipating something. Was it because the younger Lawrence saved him during the mission? Gilbert took into account Adrien's desire to quickly end the conversation, and therefore immediately began with the important gentleman. "Why did you hide your true power?" Our hero did not expect such a question right on the forehead. "You probably don't know, but many of the Viscount's vassals are concerned about the prospects for the future. If Mr. Cedric inherits power, we will face difficult times. Mr. Cedric, in my opinion, is not suitable for the role of lord. If you have even the slightest determination to stand up to your brother, then I will support you with all my might, sir," the deputy stated in one breath. While he was saying all this, Adrien looked at him through the glasses of a comprehensive view, but they did not show any changes. This means that the man is sincere. Sir Billiam is one of his father's closest advisors. Maybe Rayford said something to his deputy before going to the front. Or does he behave this way simply because the young man did him good? "I am grateful to you for such words." The younger Lawrence began to answer, and a smile began to appear on Gilbert's face under his words. "But I will pretend that this conversation did not happen." Adrien finished his sentence. Having heard the decision of the Viscount's son, the deputy refused to believe in his defeat. Our hero came close to him and patted him on the shoulder. After all, it was worth cheering up the disappointed man. This Billiam was surprisingly naive and hastened to speak out so quickly. But no matter how much Adrien tries to stop Cedric's spying, he cannot be sure that there are no types of surveillance that he is not yet aware of. Having finished the conversation, the young man moved on, leaving Gilbert far behind in confusion. Besides, Adrien could handle it himself because it was his and only his task to get rid of Anna and Cedric, and he was not going to share this pleasure with others. In the meantime, Adrien will simply know that among their vassals there are people who are not indifferent to the fate of the Viscount. By the way, our hero will be awarded a medal, but it's not that important, is it? But it turned out that it was important. The day of the award greatly pleased Adrien's pride. For services to the fatherland, the youngest son of the Lawrence family is awarded the Order of the Golden Lion, 2nd degree. The man read the text from the scroll, rewarding Adrien, who bent down on one knee in front of him in a solemn military uniform. The man who awarded our hero was Collitz van Reingard, the 23rd ruler of the Kingdom of Reingard. The crowd watching the procession cheered. The younger Lawrence was aware that even each piece of equipment for frontline officers cost more than a fighter, but he did not expect such praise for his actions. Probably the king needs Adrien to maintain morale in the country. "This is a huge honor for me. I will cherish this award all my life." Getting up from his knee, Van Reingard Adrien shook hands with Collitz. "Please look into the lens and wave your hand, Your Grace." That was all that was heard from all sides. Our hero quietly gloated. Probably when Cedric sees this, he will probably bite his elbows with anger. And he was right. "Idiots! They all just talk about Adrien. If I had gone to war, all these awards would have gone to me." The son from his first wife raged. Anna watched his hysteria from the side, but could do nothing to help him. Having calmed down a little, Cedric asked if his father had returned. "No, he still lives with this unchanged woman," his mother answered without any emotion. "He hasn't left her side lately, mother. Are you not going to do anything about it?" Cedric was curious. So what to do? Poison him too? Anna answered the question with a question. "Mom!" Cedric interrupted her. "Shh! Don't shout. It was because of Adrien that your father left us for this slut. It seems to me that he intends to protect her until Adrien returns from the front. He protects her from you and me. Can you imagine?" The first wife was indignant. "Mom, is it true that he intends to completely break with our family and leave after the wave?" Cedric tried to check the rumors. "True. That's why he's so desperate, son. Because he needs to live on something after the war. He saw in the war an opportunity to earn his title. But don't be afraid, son. He will never be your equal anyway." In order to calm her son down, she approached him and hugged him tenderly. "Don't worry, son. Mommy will take care of it," the woman repeated again. Cedric hoped that she was telling the truth, because they were supported by his maternal grandfathers, and the mother took control of most of the power of the Viscountcy. The father is still in power, but this is temporary, until he transfers it to him. So why was Adrien always smarter and more talented than him? Why was Adrien always praised, but he remained on the sidelines? Why did everyone admire Adrien without noticing him? But we completely neutralized him when we poisoned him. So why did he start getting on my nerves again? Cedric wondered. I can no longer control my anger. If Adrien's first wife and older brother hated the young man, his father and Sylvia were proud of him. The mother in front of the TV did not hesitate to show her tears, and the Viscount needed a lot of strength not to burst into tears with her. The younger Lawrence's proud smile never left the news, and his face was printed everywhere. Time passed. Now, at the beginning of the war, there were exactly 48 days. Holding a large jug, Adrien reminded all the military personnel. Officers, everyone should take an energy drink before the battle. Lined up, the men took turns approaching the young man and a couple more people to fill their glasses. Thank you very much, Your Grace. They thanked. Moving away from handing out the drink, they did not stop praising it. How refreshing! Exactly! Other brigades are already worn out, but we are full of strength. The soldiers rejoiced. Of course, they are full of strength, especially considering the fact that Adrien mixed the precious elixir into energetic. The officers did not know that a solution of 1 drop of the legendary panacea was mixed into it. To be honest, our hero was a little sorry to spend on them, but he needed the war to end quickly. After the morning refreshment of the forces, a small group of military men under the leadership of Deputy Billiam was to go on reconnaissance. Before leaving, the deputy discussed all the nuances with Adrien. Mr. Brigadier, the division commander is calling you. The soldier hastened to report to the young man. Again, Adrien drawled languidly, but there was nothing to do. Before going on a short trip, our hero decided to treat his ward. Here you go, Voronok, the young man said tenderly, handing the bird a piece of meat. Having swallowed the treat with pleasure, the eagle soared high, soaring above the car, moving on the ground. In it, Adrien and Aria sat in the 2 back seats, the driver in front, and another officer. Count Otis has been calling me more and more often lately. Looking around the surroundings, the younger Lawrence remarked out loud, His lordship must trust you. Is it bad? The officer in front answered him. Adrien was bothered by these calls, but he still couldn't refuse them. Having arrived at the desired location, the young man immediately began to drink a glass of wine, hoping to spend at least a little time at the reception with pleasure. And I was surprised to notice that other commanders were also here. Has Count Otis really gathered all the unit commanders? But he could just write to the messenger if there is something important about military operations. Maybe he wants to announce something important that he can't tell everyone? Greetings, was heard from the balcony. Otis stood there, smiling with all his 32 teeth. Rejoice, gentlemen. Soon our ears will cease to be filled with explosions. Soon the end of the war will be announced, the deputy head said confidently. Such a loud statement did not go unnoticed, and Adrien was no exception. Descending the marble staircase, the heels of his shoes clicking to the beat, the Count continued. At this hour there is a meeting between diplomats from our and the enemy's side. Soon it will be announced that the war is over. It seems that the Krytsan Empire did not intend to go that far. It was a large-scale clash, but nothing more. We have slightly smaller collisions almost every year. There was only one piece of news, but everyone began to discuss it. Crazy dogs. Why did they even start this then? I quietly turned to another officer, and the soldier standing in front of Adrien addressed him. But it's obvious that they want to show their strength, and thereby strengthen their power, came the answer. At this time, our hero recalled that in his past life, this also happened in Korea. It seems they are simply unlucky, and no one is going to accept it. He sighed and headed towards the Count. Our advanced detachment went on reconnaissance. Should I bring them back? He asked the deputy head for his opinion. Until the signing of a peace treaty, war games must continue as usual. The man immediately answered without hesitation. The young man's face immediately darkened. That's how it is. Does this mean that those of lower rank go to die, and the seniors decide everything for them? What an injustice. Well, completeness, Your Honor. Have fun. Noticing the dejected expression on the foreman's face, Otis tried to cheer him up. You were recently awarded the Order of the Golden Lion. Even more rewards await you upon your return, so enjoy the last days of the war. the man advised. Your truth. Adrien agreed with him, thinking about the question. When did he become a hero for everyone here, and not a non-entity? What should he think about others? He has a brilliant future ahead of him. He will need to return to his place when the war ends, and he must increase his level in the virtual world by then. Ding! Glasses knocked together. Count Otis drank to the last happy days of the war, and Adrien to his victory in his parents' house. I think this is good, Your Honor, Billiam thought after our hero told him about his visit to the deputy head. The conversation took place in one of Adrien's rooms. He was dressed quite simply, and Aria, as always, was sitting next to him on the sofa. She was wearing white ballet shoes, a loose white knee-length dress, and with her hair down the girl was eating cookies from a bag. Just think what would have happened if the Kreutzens had gone further and fought with us to the death. 100 heavenly fortresses and tens of thousands of vanguard officers would reduce our cities to dust. The deputy continued to think. He was right, the consequences would be terrible. One might even call it a catastrophe on a terrifying scale. Sir, you should rest. Why did you come? Adrien asked directly. Without waiting for an answer, he reached for the bag lying on Arcia's lap and handed the cookies to the deputy. What is this? Billiam asked, surprised by the treat. Gift of Count Otis. I don't know what it's called, but it's clearly something sophisticated. Our hero answered, looking at the girl, contentedly devouring both cheeks. The man took a bite without thinking. And you are different from others, Your Grace. I noticed this a long time ago. The deputy summed up his observations. At first, the young man didn't even understand what he meant. You not only worry about ordinary soldiers, but you are even personally on duty here while your people are resting. Gilbert continued to speak, stuttering at times to take another bite of the cookie. It is clear that I am different from the local nobles. In a past life, I was an ordinary citizen. And I'm not on duty here, but I'm waiting for the connection to come out so I can play. Our hero smiled while listening to the deputy, and Billiam also believes that the younger Lawrence still behaves with dignity, like a true nobleman. I think you're definitely wrong here. The young man denied his statements. When the enemy was coming straight at us, you were drinking black tea. I think this is a testament to your unshakable self-confidence. We subordinates looking at you had the opportunity to shake off tension and fear. Everyone in the 2nd Separate Brigade trusts you. The deputy told people's opinion about him. Adrien finally understood where the man was going. He probably wants to raise the topic again about what will support him against Cedric. And the young man thought that he was simply showered with compliments. Last time I already told you. Not wanting to repeat the situation from the past, Adrien began to repeat his choice, but immediately stopped when he saw that Gilbert had gotten down on one knee in front of him. I put trusted people on guard. No one will hear us here. They also checked that there were no wiretapping devices in this room. The man reported, placing his right hand on his heart, as if thereby swearing about the secrecy of the conversation. Our hero did not expect such an outcome of events. With the help of an aura and all-seeing glasses, he made sure that the man was telling the truth, and that they were all on his father's side. I see that you have taken action, but I am afraid that these measures will be noticeable. Our hero said sadly, scratching his head. That's why I came here when everyone is resting, Billiam explained. It was clear that his plan was clear and thoughtful. I, Gilbert Billiam, your humble servant, the deputy began to pronounce the oath. At first his voice trembled slightly, but then it evened out in tone. I swear allegiance to you, Adrien Lawrence, 2nd son of Viscount Lawrence. Just like that, on an ordinary day, the deputy took a vow of allegiance. After listening to the man, the young man asked about the other trusted knights, whether they wanted to tell him the same thing. Yes, my lord. Gilbert answered without hesitation for a second. Even Adrien could not find anything to object to such sincere feelings. Gilbert's face lit up at his agreement. But on one condition, Adrien stated. Which one, my lord? The deputy asked with fear. You must act as if nothing happened until I tell you what is already possible, said the young man. But what, Your Honor, wouldn't it be better for you to openly gather more allies? Even me and other knights will be enough to make you count. Billy was surprised at this decision. They will begin to count, but this is not enough to win. I really do have a plan, sir. I ask you to listen to my order, asked the younger Lawrence. Yes, my lord. Gilbert immediately agreed. The young man was interested in how many knights were ready to swear allegiance to him. The number turned out to be small. It was listed as about 5 officers and about 30 knights. If they gather his father's vassals, it will be at least twice as many. That's good. I'm rubbing my hands, Adrien remarked out loud, getting up from the sofa. He urgently needed to stretch his legs and at least walk around the room. But he was immediately stopped by Gilbert. There is one more thing, Your Grace. Your father plans to send Sir Perseus to you. I think you should contact him in advance and win him over to your side, the deputy reported. The mention of such a famous person pleasantly surprised our hero. And here's why. Perseus was the deputy commander of the Viscount's knightly regiment. Apart from the commander himself, he had no equal in military affairs and in mastery of aura. But he left the order a long time ago, becoming a victim of the power struggle that Anna started. Is such a warrior really returning to them again? Perhaps his return will turn many knights who support neutrality to your side, Billiam suggested. In theory, he was right. Perseus is a typical warrior and is highly respected among the knighthood. With him, Adrien will be able to significantly increase his influence. Then, he will truly be on an equal footing with Cedric and Anna. Now getting Sir Perseus to his side seemed like a good idea to the younger Lawrence. The young man was sure that he could find use for his talent outside the family. I want to meet him as soon as possible. Will you help me? Everything must be kept secret, of course. Adrien immediately began to testify. His determination encouraged Billiam. I'll take care of it, my lord, the deputy promised, still looking down at the younger Lawrence, standing on one knee. Soon, Adrien left his apartment. As soon as he crossed the threshold, several officers immediately saluted him. Influence is, of course, good, but strengthening influence is not the most important goal. Now Adrien's main goal is to complete the next quest of unexpected encounters. Wanting to plunge into the world of the game as quickly as possible, the young man put on almost virtual reality. Today, I will definitely achieve the creation of the 7th circle of magic, he promised himself, full of determination, falling into sleep. But he shouldn't have guessed the future so confidently. Now our hero deeply regretted this, lying on the cold marble floor. He no longer had the strength to cough up blood, and his eyes gradually lost their lively sparkle. Aria also lay motionless, and Eagle's second companion's chest no longer rose. Adrien was killed in the virtual world of the game, but my name is Kim Min-gi. But don't worry, our hero still has the opportunity to try everything again after regaining his experience. But how did it happen that the experienced gambler lost? Aria! Adrien shouted desperately. Now! The girl responded, exposing her shield to the incoming blow. Passing the levels of the quest of unexpected encounters up to the 200th level, our hero never died. In the game, it's normal to die and overcome difficulties, but Adrien's body is synchronized with the character, and surviving death will be unimaginably painful. In the fight against an overly strong monster, the younger Lawrence began to think about carrying out an attack technique. Aria always stood like a wall between the young man and the enemies, but now the monster was pushing her back. In any fight, Adrien always cared about his safety first. But now everything was different. Now, with one swing of the sword, Aria and the eagle suffered damage. The next in line to be killed next was Adrien. Raising a huge metal sword decorated with various lyres, red sparks poured from his eyes, stood the Death Knight Pascal. He wasn't just an aura master, he had a custom buff with a name specifically for this vest, and his physical strength was simply unimaginable. This was a boss of such a level that our hero could not even dream of. The young man was killed. When his experience is restored, he will have the opportunity to try again. But before that, he will be resurrected in the nearest settlement in the game world. A wild wheeze escaped from the young man's chest. Due to synchronization with the body, Adrien cannot even writhe in pain, because people are scurrying around everywhere. So, up to this point in the game, everything was too easy. Having found the strength within himself, our hero shed tears and then looked into the game's inventory, after which he used the Resurrection of Companion Scroll, thereby returning Aria to life. Mr. Adrien, forgive me. The girl asked for forgiveness as soon as she was able to completely transform. There was really sadness in her voice. How are you? Didn't it hurt you to die? Our hero was worried. It hurts, but in the game, my feelings are not as strong as yours, so it's bearable, the girl assured. Glory to you, Lord, Adrien breathed out. Even then, when I was purchasing a stat, I saw a companion that was ideal for tanking, and I have no doubt that the young man bought it. But the closer they got, the more it began to bother him that he was a healthy forehead, a 20-year-old guy, hiding behind her fragile figure during the fight. Therefore, now he will try to change his fighting style so that Aria does not have to take all the blows and his pain. Although no matter how you look at it now, he will have to change his fighting style in any case. The battle with this Death Knight showed the imperfection of how they fight. Their fighting style was too primitive. Aria blocked the enemy's movement. Voronox supported her, distracting the enemy from above or suddenly swooping down on him, and Adrien dealt strong blows of magic from behind the girl's back. The young man was deep in thought, analyzing. Before this, their equipment helped them, equalizing the forces. But the guys encountered an enemy superior to them even with their equipment. It's not difficult for him to break through Aria's defense, and everything fell from there. The problem was recharging. It takes Adrien a while to charge the spell and cast it, so the damage is not done as quickly. This means that in order to keep the enemy away from you while Adrien is casting, you need the eagle to attack the enemy from above. Whatever one may say, Aria defended herself well against the Death Knight. The monster, of course, gradually overpowered her, but she can hold on for some time. If there was something else that would simultaneously take away the enemy's health, while Aria defends and Adrien casts, then their fighting style could work. But the young man can no longer call anyone for help in the quest, unexpected encounters. Therefore, only 3 options come to mind. Firstly, our hero can use spells of low circles, which will provide high speed. Secondly, use the eagle so that it fights and does not fly and immediately fly away from the enemy. Thirdly, use Aria's sword so that she not only protects with a shield, but also deals damage. The young man will have to nerf himself and instruct Aria and the Black Eagle while he recovers experience. It won't be easy, but let's try. The younger Lawrence suggested in a calm voice, standing up slightly unsteadily from the bench. I obey. Aria accepted the instructions, but the second battle against the Death Knight Pascal did not end in the defeat of the monster. Adrien and his companions were killed again. As soon as he was resurrected, our hero's mind was eclipsed by anger. How is this even possible? The young man shouted without holding back his emotions in the middle of the square near the fountain of the virtual world. When Aria came back to life, she immediately apologized. No need. It's not your fault, it's mine. Adrien stopped her. In battle, he tried to use Eagle and Aria more actively, but Eagle was clearly not adapted to direct combat, and therefore died a minute later. Our hero died after 3, and the girl after another minute. Perhaps all the trouble came from the quick death of the funnel. Black Eagle doesn't do much damage, but its strong point is distracting the enemy's attention. This means that the eagle must be protected in order for their fighting style to work. Maybe make a chest plate for the bird to reduce the damage? So, we have to try. Let's come back while the experience is being restored. There is no reason to worry. What doesn't work will eventually work. This is my test to reach the 7th circle of magic. Our hero encouraged himself out loud. But then the 3rd battle took place, and in it again, the Dark Knight won. There was no end in sight to Adrien's anger. From an overabundance of negative feelings, he began to hit the wall. Although this time it was not so bad, the chest plate, assembled hastily, still performed its function. By equipping the eagle this time, the guys were able to prolong the battle with the Death Knight, and this gave Adrien the opportunity to learn the knight's techniques. We saw what he is capable of, which is good. We will restore the experience and try again, said the young man. Yes, sir. His companions supported him. At the beginning of the 5th battle, Death Knight Pascal stared in surprise at the enemy who appeared before him. Seriously? What is this, a circus? You have a real talent for entertaining the undead. Maybe you can make this your profession? The knight mocked. You don't understand. Don't you know that people have such a thing as a fighter jet? Adrien answered him, showing off your magic wand with a spell in all its glory. And with her help, he began to put it into action. In addition to this knight, Aria began to attack from below, and the eagle grabbed its owner's back with its claws, causing damage from above. Die, die! Our hero wished that the monster had the strength to defeat him, calling out a spell, as if shooting from a machine gun at the enemy, and the knight barely had time to dodge Aria's sword and cancel the magical attacks from above. But then, an unexpected situation occurred. Great! Adrien praised the eagle in flight, but the bird did not fully understand his phrase, and therefore she lowered her master right in front of the knight, who managed to kill Aria. Did you deign to come down? Well, fine, Pascal said, pleased with the current situation. "Hello, sir." Adrien greeted him on his knees, looking stupidly up at his executioner. What happened next is easy to guess. He was killed. But our hero did not give up, and now the 9th battle was already underway. This time, the guys tried a different configuration. A magician who goes ahead? This is funny. The knight laughed in the face of his opponents. But this time, too, Adrien's time with his companions soon expired. However, this time the damage inflicted on the knight was much greater. The biggest problem was dodging the monster's attacks and at the same time casting a spell. Nevertheless, our hero held out for 25 minutes. It turned out that this is possible. We need to try again and equip equipment that will speed up Adrien's reaction speed, rather than casting. Now he will try to be a fast-running and dexterous magician, which no one wants to be. These were the last thoughts of our hero before the next resurrection. Adrien could not find a place for himself while he was resting. As soon as his experience was restored, he immediately rushed into battle again. Now the young man tried to be so clever that the enemy did not understand where he was. He began to feel short of breath. His legs could no longer carry him, and his hands could barely hold the magic wand. But the young man continued to dodge. But the moment came. All three were alive and began to attack the knight. But the monster destroyed both of them with one blow. Through the burning pain, Adrien smiled. Here it is. This last battle showed him everything. The young man tried to be a clever magician, and this reduced his damage. But he not only protects himself, but also allows his companions to attack. As a result, in the last battle, he lasted 62 minutes, and the knight's damage was 84%. "I can do it. A few more tries, and I can do it." Adrien rejoiced in his soul. Waking up in bed, he sadly took off his virtual glasses. Unfortunately, he exceeded the time limit for communication given to him for today, and he will not even be able to simply enter the game. Throwing back the blanket, the young man began to stretch. "I thought I had reached level 200, and that's it. But there's such a delay," he drawled thoughtfully. Aria stood nearby, listening to him. Rising from the bed, the young man suddenly staggered. "Oh, it seems to me like everything is in slow motion. Am I sick?" Adrien became worried. "You have died and been resurrected many times, sir. I think it's normal that your vision has changed for now." The assistant explained his condition. "Do you feel this way too?" Our hero asked about such a side effect. The girl thought, clenching and unclenching her hand into a fist. "I can't say for sure, but I have become stronger. Statistically, I'm the same, but I feel like I've become many times stronger. Only experience gives this strength," Aria suggested, deep in thought. Adrien has almost gotten used to the idea that his companion is an artificially created machine in human form, but he only now noticed that Aria now speaks not at all like an artificially created homunculus. She was gaining experience, new impressions, and soon she would be completely indistinguishable from a person. "Do you have any instructions for me?" the girl asked expectantly. Adrien shook his head negatively. He planned to sleep, and Aria couldn't help it. As soon as the internet is available again, they will immediately try again. In the 12th battle, the knight's damage was 75%, and in the 17th battle, the knight's death damage was 98%. Again and again in the 18th battle, Adrien, Aria, and the eagle used their skills to win. Finally, the damage inflicted on the Death Knight after 18 attempts reached 100%. Gradually, the knight began to smolder, turning into dust. Raising his hands high, our hero sighed joyfully. "Hooray, we won!" he shouted with all his might. Aria and Rondell also shared his good mood. Finding himself on the 8th floor of the magical tower of Manuel Lucas, Adrien took his breath away. The 7th floor was several times larger than the 6th, but this one was the size of a royal library. It was hard to believe that all this splendor is actually graphics. As soon as Adrien thought about this, a voice that came out of nowhere assured that everything was actually real. "It can't be! Have I still not passed all the tests to get the 7th circle of magic?" Adrien shouted, snatching his wand and turning his head from side to side. But Aria's reaction surprised him. Unlike him, the girl stood calmly, turning her gaze somewhere upward, smiling. "Sir, don't be afraid," she said to the young men. Adrien also looked up. In the air right above them are a small gray-haired elderly man. It was a fairy. Fairy grandfather, to be more precise. Is this really Adrien's new companion? But why then does he look so much like Archduke Lucas? This can't happen. "My name is Chester." The grandfather introduced himself, straightening his hat that was falling on his side. He was somewhere from shoulder to elbow in height. I am the ruler of fate, and a piece of the soul of Manuel Lucas. The fairy continued to introduce herself. What? Ruler of destiny? A piece of the soul? What is going on? Our hero shouted in his soul. My name is Chester. I am the ruler of fate, and a piece of the soul of Manuel Lucas. In other words, I am an artificial intelligence created based on his memory. Again, the grandfather explained everything first. This clone looked very much like our hero's savior, and Adrien would have been happy if he hadn't been completely confused. The young man hoped that Chester was disposed towards him. Otherwise, he did not know how to react, and Adrien also hoped that the entity would not take away from him what he had received. Don't worry, Chester tried to reassure the followers of the Archmage. I can't believe that you are an artificial intelligence, because you speak so freely and unconventionally. Our hero expressed his concerns. Of course, I have no soul, but I have the memories of a person's entire life. The grandfather answered him. Although Manuel Lucas could not resist the natural process of aging and death, a part of him remained in this virtual world. In a sense, this is eternal life. Adrien gradually stopped being afraid and was now chatting cheerfully. After thinking a little, Chester replied, You can say so. This is why he created the Hollywood system, but it is incomplete. Memories are damaged during recording and can also decay. You cannot say that I am alive because my existence is like a ghost. Manuel Lucas knew that even if he created a sentient clone of a memory clone, this creation would not be himself. If he were interested in eternal life through the transmigration of his memories into a creature, he would not have placed it in a magic tower, but would have created a homunculus, like Aria, and recorded all his memories to her. Following Chester's thoughts, Adrien mentally agreed with him. Somehow he already had suspicions that perhaps Manuel Lucas intended to inhabit his body. But it seems that this is not the case. Can I ask why you showed up? Our hero asked. Frankly speaking, the difficulty of passing the last level confused me. I wondered if this meant that I would be given new tests and restrictions imposed. Without waiting for an answer, the young man immediately shared his assumptions while his grandfather listened to him patiently. When Adrien finished, he flew closer to him, and right in front of him, the game system screen opened. It was written there that he was given the right to use administrative rights in the Hollywood system 5 times. You received all of Manuel Lucas's legacy. Naturally, it includes administrator rights. There are conditions for using these rules, since you have not yet fully assumed the rights to destiny. But in the future, if you want, you will use these rights as you please, Chester explained. How can I use them? Our hero continued to ask. It turned out that he could apply them to any programs running on the Hollywood virtual system. The Hollywood system has features of virtual reality and is similar to the human internet system. This means that Adrien will be able to control all information online, but there are 4 prohibitions on using administrator rights. First, use administrator rights in the online chronicle that is tied to the fate of Manuel Lucas. Second, gain access to another person's brain. Third, steal other people's property. Fourth, do actions that will lead to negative consequences in the real world, explained the artificial intelligence. And Adrien kept racking his brains. What are these prohibitions? It turns out that they are quite logical. Is it possible to convert money received with the help of fate into real money? He asked Chester. It's not difficult. There are several ways. I recommend creating an account for an investment fund on a virtual exchange, the old man advised. Won't the police arrest me for this? Our hero became worried. The likelihood of investigating such a crime is 0. You need to launder money wisely and adjust all reporting as if it were a real fund. Chester winked at him, smiling. In this case, I wish to use my administrator rights, said the young man. I understand. At the moment, your funds are equal to 12,625 billion loots. The last arrival was when you opened the chest on the 8th floor. Should I get my calculations in order? Asked the old man. Yes, please, Adrien asked. He also wanted Chester to invent the legend of Aria, and if possible, indicate the sacred city of Everhill as her birthplace. Okay, I will make documents about the origin, which will indicate that she is an orphan, the old man promised. Why isn't he a genie in a bottle? Adrien thought to himself, pleased. So, It's your responsibility to give me administrator rights and help me apply them correctly? Asked our hero. Hearing the question, Chester nodded his head affirmatively.